All right, all right, all right. Welcome back to the True Crime Cafe, everybody. I hope you're all having an amazing evening tonight. We watched and followed the Brian Kohberger. Uh-oh. Sorry, everybody. We followed the Brian Kohberger hearing today for the motion hearing for the to basically take the death penalty off the table. Well, this evening, guys, we are going to break that down. I have an open panel rolling, getting everybody's opinions, thoughts, and feelings on this. Thank you all for joining us tonight. I hope you're all having a great night. Let's get this party started. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. All right, all right, all right. Welcome back, everybody. Again, thank you guys so very much for joining us tonight. I do appreciate it. Like I said, we are looking into the Brian Kohberger death penalty motion hearing. I'm going to open up the panel for this, and we're going to break this down. Put your thoughts out there. I want to see what everybody feels and thinks about this. Regardless of your opinion, whether you think it's innocent or guilty, everybody's opinions are welcome here. And you will not be judged on your opinion, so don't ever worry about that. Thank you all for joining me again tonight. It is awesome to be here with you guys, as always. Great to be back with everybody again. Thank you all for joining us for the morning / afternoon show. It was a long one, guys, because we followed this hearing. We made it through it. And here we are back tonight to break it down. Break it down. Can't wait to get everybody's feelings and opinions on this one. Hell, I might even open up the phone lines. We'll see what happens. We will see what happens. Come on in, guys. Grab a seat. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, good night. Whatever it is for you, I hope it's good because it's great to be here with you guys. Thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. Yeah, the time change thing got me screwed up too a little bit. I don't know why. It's never bothered me before, but it is tonight. It is this time. See? Come on in, y'all. I left Mom a link to see if she'd be joining us. I don't know. She might have fallen asleep. I had my grandbabies here. We had dinner, blah, blah, blah. And this is the earliest I could get in here, folks. My apologies. Give me a minute here. Let's get some peeps in here, and then I will jump in and see who we got here this evening. And I really appreciate you guys being here, all of you. All right. Come on, let's see who we do have here so far. It looks like Doodlebug's in the house. Surprise, surprise. Midwest, welcome back to you, my dear. Good to see you tonight. Brandy B, the OG. Welcome back, Mr. Walt Harris in the house. Good to see you, Walt. Thank you for joining us, brother. Miss Alicia J, welcome. Great to have you back. Miss Sherry Wisdom Speaks in the house. Good to see you tonight, Miss Sherry. Welcome back, Sussbusters. Great to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us. Good golly, Miss Molly Drake's in the house again. Great to see you. Virginia Wolf, what's up, brother? Good to see you. Good to have you here tonight. Stormy Sherry says, that's us. Hello to you, Miss Sherry. Thank you for joining us. Let's see here. Miss Bonnie Bailey, welcome back. Great to see you again tonight. Excuse me. The lovely Miss Barbara Hall's in the house. Welcome back, Miss Barbara. Great to see you as always. Tomboy Charms in the house, guys. Welcome back, Tomboy. And of course, Timmy's Legacy, that awesome new channel. You got to check it out, guys. We will be pushing that channel like crazy, and I can't wait for the premiere on that one. I hope you're all there for that. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Virginia says, Lee's looking forward to this. Awesome stuff. Good to have it. Good to hear it. Good to have you here. Please share it out, guys. And please, pretty please, hit that like button when you come to the door if you would. I would greatly appreciate it. Miss Kelkel's in the house. Well, welcome back to you. Great to see you. Come on in, everybody. Get yourselves a seat. Get comfortable. Plenty of places to sit. I got a couch, I got a chair, I got a toilet, I got a stump. Whatever you want to sit on, we got room for you. How is my doodle doing tonight? Great to see you, doodle. I told Mom, I don't know if she's going to jump in or not. She said she was, but who knows? People get busy. Miss Christy Nevada, welcome back to you. Great to see you tonight. I love all the green in here. So many meatballs, so little time. What are we going to do about it, guys? Thank you all for jumping in the sauce with us and spilling some of that sauce tonight. All you awesome meatballs. Appreciate you so very much. Walt says, this is kind of like apologizing for peeing on the toilet seat before you even do it. What are you going to do, Walt? What are you going to do, Walt? What does that mean? Now you got me all nervous. Mikey's in the house. Good to see you, brother. Good to have you back. Appreciate you taking time out of your busy lives to jump in here with all of us. Oh, yeah, what the defense did. It was... It's protocol for a case, folks, but it was just not right. It was just not right. I'm sorry. Kind of inexplicable. I can say that. I agree with you, sir. Come on in, everybody. Share it out. Please, and thank you, please. I know my Doodle had some things to say about it. You're welcome to join me too, Doodle. You know that. Miss Cal, wonderful to see you tonight. $34 peeps in here with 23 likes. We're getting there. Let's see if we can make that match, guys. Let's get this one up in the algorithm if we can. Please and thank you. I just threw a paintbrush at the kid. All because of Dago's places to sit comment. Huh? What? Okay. If that works. Whatever works for you. The one guy citing international law against the death penalty had something that I had never... Me either, Walt. That one just had me sitting here going, It was a crying shame. The whole thing was a mess, and that's why we're doing this, guys, because we need to break this shit down. I'm telling you. What the hell happened today? That's all I can say. They brought nothing to the table today. Oh, he definitely did. Oh, I got you, Tomboy. I got you. Yeah, they brought nothing to the table. Today was definitely a win for the prosecution as far as I'm concerned, because the arguments that they supposedly brought were not arguments, folks. There was nothing legitimate about any of this. It was a joke. This is Dago's opinion. You don't have to agree with me, but it definitely is my opinion. What a mess it was. Again, according to me. Come on in. I'm going to wait just a few more minutes before we get kicking, just to give everybody a chance so that we don't have to start it over again. Yes, yes, yes. Come on in, everybody. Yeah, today was one hell of a shit show, that's for sure. Oh yeah, we're going to break it down for sure, Kel. 24 likes. Now it's 25 people. People are coming in and then leaving. I guess I must be scary looking tonight. Maybe it must be scary. Maybe I need to wear a mask tonight. Now bring people back in. What do you think, folks? I can be anonymous. Yes? No? Maybe? Maybe if I cover up my face, it'll bring more people in. What do you think, guys? Good idea? Thank you. Yes, please, guys. Please, 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 if you would, please click this link. Subscribe to Miss Barbara Matahari's new channel, Timmy's Legacy. It's gonna be something. It's gonna be something awesome. I want to see everybody in here. Everybody subscribe to this channel, folks, please. Because we're all going to be there when it's up and running. We're all going to be part of it. We're all going to be talking on it. We're all going to be talking about it. I want to see as much support for that channel as we can get. So please, please click that link and jump over there. Sus said the mask is unsettling. It's an anonymous mask. You don't think this is unsettling compared to that? Wait till tomorrow when you see me. Miss Michelle Weddle, welcome back to you. Great to see you all. Come on in, guys. Thank you, Kel, for that. Yeah, I was really kind of thrown off. I mean, it started off okay, fine. I know why we're here. Justice Jane in the house. Welcome back, Jane. Wonderful to see you tonight. And Anne stood up and started talking, and I'm going, what is she doing? And it just went on from there, and it got better and better and better and better and better and better. And I'm telling you, I mean that completely sarcastically. Just saying. Can't wait to get your guys' take on it. Bo show. SRBBBB. Welcome to you. Thank you for being here with us tonight. You are appreciated. Thank you to the Blue Crew for doing what you do and joining us tonight, because we all know that I couldn't, wouldn't, or should never do this without them. It just doesn't work. just doesn't work. Let me see here. Do 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 do. Well, I hope Miss Bonnie M joins us again tonight. It was exciting to see her. And Miss Lynn 69. Wonderful to have her back. Great to see everyone. Everyone. Welcome, Miss Taylor, with Stitchin', Bitchin', and so much more. Excuse me. Are you fixed? Is there any other moderators in here that are stuck in top chat or having any problems with that? Please let me know so I can fix it for you. It might be because of what I did with the other people, Brandy. Yeah, if you're having any of those problems, please let me know. 32 peeps in here, 31 likes. We are on track, everybody. Oh, hell yes, Alicia. Alex Cross. I love Alex Cross, too. James Patterson is the shit, so yes. Yes, James Patterson, you cannot go wrong there. Him and Stephen King are my two faves. Now, Walt, and up in your stream in the chat for YouTube, it says live chat, top chat, and well, on mine it says fan funding. A lot of people are getting stuck in the top chat and they're not seeing current parts of the conversation. So, if you're ever stuck up at the top where it says top chat and you can't get into live chat to stay caught up, let me know and I can fix it. Looks really good. I bet it does. There's not much of his that doesn't. So, I am ready for that one. I'll be checking that out. I will be checking it out. Yes. Yes, yes. Of course. Come on in, everybody. Anybody, all of you, go get other people. Bring them with you. Tell them there's a party at Dago's. Come on. I want to hear everybody's opinions on this to break this down. I bet it was. I'm so sorry you went through that, SRB. That had to have been a pain in the ass. And you did it just to be here every time. That is a loyalty. That is that's awesome. You guys are so amazing. Yeah, you were definitely a trooper through all that. Seriously. Kept on doing it every day, twice a day. That is awesome. I don't think I missed anybody. If I did, I will catch up with you. I promise you that. 32 peeps in here. 32 likes. All right. I did it with a lot of cussing. I bet you did. Back in love chat. What the hell is love chat, Walt? You're a mess. I wonder if Phil's going to join us. I've always would love to enjoy or listen to Phil's take on this. Still think Phil's an attorney. That's between you and I, guys. All of you guys that are out there lurking, as they call it, thank you so much. I appreciate you just as much. Please make sure to hit the like button out there if you could. And share this out, guys, to anybody and everybody. Oh, shoot. Speaking of, I just reminded myself. Awesome. Let me fix this real quick while we're waiting, and then we'll get started. I just reminded myself of something. Whoa, that's big. Hold on. Cool. Whoa, that's too small now. Here we go. Anything you have, any questions you have, Barbara, feel free to ask. I will be glad to help you. Whatever I can't help you with, I will find somebody that can. Gotcha, Walt. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. No thanks needed, Miss Barbara. You know that. Okay, I got us posted on Twitter too. Thank you, Miss Kel. She's right. Check out the link for the merchandise, everybody. Some really cool stuff. Christmas is coming, and we got some new stuff coming soon. Some holiday stuff we're going to be trying to put together, and much, much more. Go check it out. If you want one of these awesome tees, hold on. You can't go wrong with these guys. These are awesome. You can get the morning show t-shirts. You can get a Walt Harris is here t-shirt. I'm getting one of them. There's some really cool stuff there. Please go check it out. Great job, Kel. I appreciate that so very much. Alrighty then. Let's get this snow on the road. That would be awesome, Brandy. We might do that. We might have to do that. Robert Bell, good evening, sir. All right. Here's what I'm going to do first, though. Hold on a minute. Bam. All right. All right. So I pinned the link in the chat for anybody that would like to join us tonight. Open panel. And I would like to. What the hell is this? Oh, shoot. Hold on, guys. I just screwed up. Welcome, Miss Nina. Wonderful to have you tonight here. Let me try that again. Okay, there it is. I know. I'm fixing it. Don't worry about it. I'm not real smart. Hold on. Let's try this one more time. There we go. For anybody that would like to jump up and join us up here tonight, and express your views, your feelings, your thoughts, whatever, about this hearing, let's do it. There is a link pinned. The only thing I ask, unless it's somebody that I know very well that's been in here 100 times with me, I need you to show your face backstage just for a quick second so I can see that you're actually bringing up your face and not something else. Miss Lily Moon in the house tonight. Welcome, Lily Moon. Wonderful to have you. Good to see you. I love your kitty picture there. Right. You do not need to leave your camera on just for a quick second backstage so I can see it's you. Shut it back down. Once you're on panel, you don't need to have it up there. You can keep it down like this and just talk through your little icon. That's all. Again, there is the link for Timmy's Legacy, the awesome new channel Miss Barbara and Matahari put together. Click that link. Jump in, subscribe, hit the like button, and share it out, guys, if you would. Please and thank you. Yes, very true. Walt's got a great point there. If you're going to go up on panel and join me tonight, or join us, whoever's up here with me, and you're watching on your TV, please be sure to turn your TV down because it's going to cause all sorts of chaos in here for us, and we won't be able to hear you. Yes, and if you do click that link and decide to jump up here, like Walt said, please show your face, not your waist. We'll bring you up here. Turn your camera off. You're good to go. You don't even have to turn your camera on up here at all, guys. Just show me backstage. That's all. Thank you, Walt. And if you guys would want to real quick check out that link right there and go look at our TikTok. Miss Brandy's a hard-working girl over there and puts all sorts of stuff together for that TikTok. If you haven't gone over there and followed it yet, please do. Subscribe to that. Follow it. Whatever you got to do on TikTok, however it works, please do over there. We would love to have you for that too. Alicia. That was good. Welcome, 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 everybody. Again, thank you so much for being here. It's wonderful to see you tonight, Lily Moon. Thank you. There's Miss Pebbles. Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight, Miss Pebbles. Appreciate you so very much. Now we can get started. Miss Pebbles is in the house. Walt, you're a mess. All right. Back to where we was. So let's get this started. Uh-oh. 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 Who do we have here? Blink. It is Mom. Hello. How are you?
I was in the shower, so I'm late.
Well, good. At least you smell good up here next to me. No stinking.
Well, thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Of course. Thank you for joining me tonight. I have this set up for an open panel tonight, so we may have some company up here expressing their views and opinions on this. You have not seen this whole thing, have you?
No, I have not.
Oh boy.
I just seen like 15 minutes of it when I was on my lunch.
Yeah, this is a reach, Mom. The defense really went outwardly on this and made a mess of it, in my opinion. They kind of embarrassed themselves, in my opinion. Just saying. Hello, Ro. Welcome, Miss Rowena, tonight.
In your humble opinion?
Yeah, very humble. Miss Pebbles says, "Hey, Dago, we were just
finished yelling at Fox News on the TV."
Oh yeah, got you. Pebbles says, "We were just talking about the good old days of the Idaho case and the creators who started it, which included you, of course." Oh yeah, I was one of the main ones on it. That's for sure. Back in the good old days.
Yeah.
Hard to believe.
I covered it a lot until I had to go back to work, and that's when I backed away from my channel.
Yeah.
So when was the last time you uploaded something from your phone?
Me?
Mm-hmm.
I don't. Why?
Just kind of off subject here, but I uploaded a short, and I had to send my ID in to show that I am me.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Yeah. Is that one of their new laws?
I've already sent them my ID because I was monetized at one time. So I don't know what had happened was to my channel, but now I know why I have not been in the algorithm. Apparently, my channel has no history.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Now, granted, I've had my channel since 2017 and 400 and some odd thousand watch hours, but I have no channel history.
How did you find that out?
I'll send you the screenshot. I posted it on Twitter. It's on
I would
Twitter.
like, well, I don't go in there too often, but I would like to, makes me wonder if that happened to me too.
Mm-hmm. I only upload shorts from my phone unless I'm like going to the memorial or going fishing or something. I don't use my phone. I use the laptop. And I haven't uploaded a short in a while, and I went to upload it. And when I went to upload it, a thing popped up over my screen. And I was like, what the hell? The hell do you mean I don't have any history?
Did you go into YouTube Studio and look at your analytics?
I haven't been on the laptop. I can, though.
You need to.
I went on my phone in Studio, but it's different on the phone. It's like cheesy.
Go on your laptop and do it because I want to see. It sounds like you might have gotten hacked.
Oh, well.
Like somebody maybe hijacked your channel.
Whoever hacked me better hope to hell that my little ammo that I have in the background doesn't get wind of it.
Yeah, well, I'm just worried about your stats and stuff like that. Like you've been around longer than I have, okay? So you should definitely have history. Unless your channel was restarted or something. That's what I don't understand. Something's wrong with that.
No.
Your analytics should tell the whole story. Nothing's changed with that?
Mm-mm.
That doesn't make any sense to me then.
Nope. And then amazingly, the short that I uploaded's got 1,300 views.
Really?
But the one before that had 155, which is really abnormal for my shorts.
What did you reset after that tonight or anything?
Mm-mm.
See, something's been going on. Welcome, Leslie and Billy. Good to see you. Something's been going on lately in YouTube. Like, I got new people joining, but my subscriber numbers are going backwards.
So are mine. I've lost 13 subs in the past 6 days.
Doodle's having the same problem. Mine was going up, and then it's going back down. And my numbers are going up, then they go back down. There's something not right with this. They're doing something, and it's screwing something up for us.
Mm-hmm.
My views
like now I'm sitting at 3,776 subs. I had over 3,800 a week ago.
So that was at 10,100 and something, and they just started dropping little by little. There was a reason for it at one point, I thought. So then it started to go back up, and I was plus. And then the other day, they're going down. Like, I'll see 3 new people come in here. I know they subscribe. They tell me they do. And then I'll look over and my numbers say I'm minus 5 subscribers or something. And it's like, what is going on with this? And yesterday I was at 10,058. This morning I come in, I'm at 10,044.
So it doesn't make any sense. It's every end of the year they screw with something, just like they put that stupid heart, the little emojis at the bottom of mobile chat. That screwed everything up. And then there was an update that went through, and like you had 8,000 people in your live and 400 chatting.
Right.
You know, I wish they'd just leave stuff alone.
I know, because it's screwing other things up for me too.
No, I've clicked on everything. I don't see anything that's changed. I'm not monetized, so it's all still empty like it should be.
Mm-hmm. What's happening, AR? Good to see you tonight, brother.
Just any creators that are in chat, I would say if you haven't went on mobile and took a look at your channel, I'd do so.
AR said he's having problems too, so.
Is he?
Yeah, and I know Doodle is.
Yeah, see, it's bullshit. We spend too much time and money, and I hate to put it on money, but we spend too much time and money in building these channels for some crazy shit like this to happen. And I'm in YouTube jail for the next 24 hours. I didn't even do anything wrong.
For what?
Because they need to identify who I am.
What the hell?
Yep. Now, it let me upload the video and then sends me a notification saying that Google has to review my account for 24 hours. And because I had this channel monetized, you know, all my Google shit's under my government name because, you know, you're monetized. So you have to send in information to AdSense and all that shit. So they know who the hell I am.
Wait a minute. So they let you post a video, but then they put you in YouTube jail for whatever.
Kyoko said she just went and looked at my channel and it said I wasn't subscribed. I clicked on it and then switched over to subscribe. Thank you, honey. Because even my old man's phone, as soon as I noticed it, I grabbed his phone. And I was like, hey, let me see your phone. And I went through his phone and found my channel. And normally my channel pops up first on his phone. I had to go look for my channel.
See, there's a problem here already because mine, if I type the word mind, it's already on your channel.
Yeah, and see, and I usually come up on Google too.
Where the hell are you? Well, there
right there. That's me.
Okay, I'm still subscribed.
See, it's there. It's there. It all looks right. Even from yours, it looks right. Because I grabbed his phone and went through his phone to find my channel, which I shouldn't have had to. It should have popped up on his front page.
Yeah, right. Something's been going on. I'm telling you, something's weird.
See, at Pebbles, it shows the last short's 804 views. It shows almost 1,300 in my studio. See, they need to quit screwing with stuff.
That might have been showing that way too. Like after my shows, it'll show that I had like 455 views. Then when it ends, the stream actually ends, it says like 325. I'm like, what the hell? Like, what is going on? And like I said, AR said he's been having problems with it for a while. So I don't get it, Mom. Hopefully they work this out and figure it out because it's really causing problems. It's making people want to quit in some cases, I think.
Pebbles, the last short that I posted was about a billboard sign war between McDonald's and Sonic. It's super funny, but I tagged them on Twitter. I'll go after their asses on Twitter. They generally will respond to me. And like, I don't get a bot. I get human response.
See, I went down again. Something's not right. I was plus subscribers 2 days ago, right? And now it says that I am minus 25 in the last 28 days. How does that happen?
It's crazy. SRB, I've been interacting with Team YouTube for like 2.5 years on Twitter. And this is the first time I've ever had an issue with my channel.
There's a lot of people that are having issues. My shorts are doing okay. I'm all in green on my shorts. But they're not even getting the views that they were.
See, something, they're screwing with something because it's the end of the year.
Mm-hmm. Doesn't make no sense to me. Election? You think it's the election?
It's possible.
I don't know. I don't mean the election as in because of who's in there. I mean because of the technology that's being used for it.
Well, we were just watching Fox News. Like when I got out of the shower, that's what he was watching. And they can't even get any of their stuff to load. He was having to read a teleprompter.
Maybe we're being hacked. Maybe all this stuff's being hacked by the Russians again. Is Paula here?
I don't know. I haven't seen Paula in a while. Is she okay?
She's been busy, but I see somebody in chat saying something. Is she really here though?
I don't know. I'll tag her and see.
That would be awesome. Awesome.
No, she's not coming up.
It's Elon.
It's Elon. I screw with Elon too on Twitter, so I figured he'd come at me over there. Why is my forehead so shiny? Yeah, that's better.
Okay, so I just accidentally took that down, so bear with me while I pull it back up. Sorry, if you got me all dumbfounded. Who are you
Sorry,
talking to?
y'all.
No. Don't apologize.
I just wanted you to know that to check your stuff because something's going on that's weird.
It shouldn't. See, that's the thing right there. That pisses me off. It should not pull us out of an algorithm just because they're updating.
Exactly.
That's bullshit. Because we fight to get in that algorithm. It's not easy.
Mm-hmm.
I know. I've been in the algorithm 3 times now, and something's happened. And it's bumped me out of it. It's ridiculous for what we do. As often as I'm on here 7 days a week, you guys. Sometimes twice a day. That's a lot of time to put into this, okay? And I spend hours in here.
It is. That's what I'm saying. We put our hearts, our souls, money, time.
And get nothing back out of it, except to be able to hang with you awesome people, but still. Your hair does look good, doesn't it, Mom?
Well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
It's the shower stuff, folks.
Some lava soap shampoo stuff that my sister got me.
It just looks like super full or something. It looks a little different than normal.
It's wet.
That's
probably part of it.
All right, let me find this again. Which was, and get that started. Hold on.
This party started.
Here we go. Bada bing. So we're gonna start off watching it. The link is pinned in the chat. If any, in the YouTube side. If anybody wants to join Mom and I up here, putting out your feelings, opinions, thoughts, theories on this, please do. That's what we're doing tonight. That's what I'm here for. That's what I want to hear. So I know I got my own humble opinion, as Mom put it. And yes, thank you. Please take a moment to hit that thumbs up. We appreciate every single one we get, guys. It doesn't cost a cent. It only takes a second. Steven's Adventure, welcome back, my friend. It was, Leslie. It was a huge waste for them, but let's get it started. Let's get it started. See what the lovely Miss Ann says. Oh, we were having fun in here today, Mom. They were a trip. I made a comment, on my hand. I'm a hand person. Sergeant Smellgood came in on Doodle's side, and he's like I am. He's a hand person. And noticed that this lady here, because she's kind of a large woman. She's big, like very tall and big hands and all that. And he made a comment about her hands being abnormally large. And I was like, yes, they are kind of big. And then we both saw Ann stand up, and we both said in separate chats, now see, Ann's got nice hands. And they started making, Gaia was in here. They started making fun of us. Well, me, making fun of me. So get a room, Dago. This and that and everything else. It was funny as hell, though. Anyway, it was a good time. All right.
Wolf, or Dr. Wolf, I should say.
Very briefly, Your Honor. I would just note that the defense did submit an affidavit. The court can review that. It clearly indicates what she would testify to if the court were to allow her to testify. So we don't really need to make a record because it already exists in the form of that affidavit. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right. The court is, having reviewed the materials, believes that given the concerns about the current justiciability of the, or ripeness, if you will, of the issue, I do believe that the declaration is a sufficient proffer of what that general testimony would be that would allow us to discuss the issue. And so for the time being, I'm not going to hear from Ms. Wolf or Dr.
Shame
Wolf,
on
I
you
should
all.
say, her testimony. The declaration is an appropriate proffer. I will hear the merits of the motion based upon that proffer next. All right.
You know what? Somebody else said that to me earlier too. By the way, I'm sorry if I didn't say it clearly. Welcome, AR. It's good to see you tonight, brother. I appreciate you jumping in here. Guys, you might want to go check and see if you're like with my channel, mom's channel, and all the other channels you guys are sub to. Go look. If you want to be subscribed, go look and make sure you are subscribed. I've had a lot of people tell me that they were unsubscribed from the channel, that they didn't do it. They didn't want to be. Go make sure that you are subscribed if you choose to be. And if not, resubscribe to it. I think that has been some of what the problem is too. So go check Doodles if you're subscribed. Mine, Mom's, Arctic, any of us that you want to be subscribed to, make sure that you actually are. And I make sure that you hit the notification thing, because my understanding is that kind of locks it in. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what I was told. So make sure to hit the notification bell as well. That's why a lot of people aren't getting the notifications either.
It's supposed to.
Yeah, it's supposed to lock it in, and then you're
If you
supposed to
click
make
all,
sure.
it's supposed to hold it in place.
Yes, and then you'll get the notifications when we all go live too. That's another big thing. So make sure you do. Good SRB. Okay.
So let's hear that from the defense.
Thank you, Your Honor. I would ask
Here we go.
for leave to supplement that declaration, the information that is more recent between 2010 studies and a book that was published that is relied upon by Dr. Wolf. That's not.
Yes, it is. So importante.
And I would like to make that part of the record too from her. So if the court continues to have her testimony not be allowed, I would ask that I be allowed after the.
Welcome, 12 Gauge. Great to have you guys here tonight. Again, anybody that is interested in joining us up here tonight, the link is pinned in the chat. I would love to hear from you, your thoughts, your feelings, your opinions on this. Let's do it, y'all.
Fact to make that part of the record.
You can submit that, and I will then hear any objections to that, and I will consider that.
Okay. Thank you, Your Honor. Then moving on to our argument, and I will largely not repeat what's in our brief since the court has had a chance to take a look at that.
Here's another thing I was told. Sorry to interrupt again. If you are subscribed per se, unsubscribe and resubscribe to it, and sometimes that resets, and make sure to hit the bell again, and that'll start getting you your notifications back. I was told. I don't know if that's fact, but that's how I was told. Welcome back, Midwest. Good to see you tonight.
We think that the court ought to strike the death penalty in this case and not allow the case to go forward as a death penalty case because Idaho does not have a current means of executing anybody. When somebody sits on death row and there's no real means of executing them, that is dehumanizing to that person. That's similar.
Say there's no means under Idaho law, the method of execution is lethal injection, and if unavailable, then the firing squad. You rely significantly on the idea that lethal injection is not available based upon the quote-unquote botched execution of Mr. Creech.
Show me your face real quick, boss. Just for a quick. All right, there you are. Cool. Welcome, 12 Gauge. How are you tonight? Can you hear me?
How's it going? How's it going? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. You sound good. Welcome, bro.
All right. All right.
Good stuff. Good stuff. So I actually was kind of hoping you'd jump up here. I was just looking at you in chat earlier, and I noticed that you have a lot of the same feelings I do about this. So before we even get started on this, what do you think about what's your overall your thought process on this as of today, 12 Gauge?
I was watching a little bit of this when it first started this morning, the trial, or not the trial, but the hearing. And it seems to me like they're trying awfully hard to get the aggravators and the death penalty off the table for some reason.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to me how I understand why they're doing it, but it just seems like they're just throwing everything at the wall, hoping something will stick. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Especially after today, man. Today was I felt like it was like kangaroo kitty court today. It was ridiculous.
Oh yeah,
It was
but
ridiculous.
it was definitely a different courtroom than the one in Latah County for sure.
Yeah, oh yeah. This is that okay. This judge, is it, how do you say it? Hippler? Is that his name? Or hit something like that?
Hippler, yeah.
Yeah, this new judge is a no nonsense judge. This judge makes, excuse the phrasing, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful. This judge makes John Judge makes him look like he has no idea what he was doing. Okay, this guy is not playing. This guy is citing law. He's putting it out of his mouth. Right here. Boom, boom, boom. He knows this stuff. John Judge was like confused, it seems like, in the other hearings. You know what I'm saying? Like he had no idea. And this guy is like, no, this is what it is. That is what it is. He was definitely catching the defense off guard today. I'll tell you that much.
It also seemed like what that attorney's name, the Logston, right?
Jay Logston.
Yeah, it seemed like toward the end he was half-heartedly he was defeated, bro.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. Let me turn my mic down. Am I too loud, you guys? Okay. How do I sound too loud?
Not to me, you don't.
Okay.
Hey,
Not
Mom,
to
how
me,
you
but
doing?
I have. Good. How are you?
Good. Long time no see.
Okay. Good. I don't want to scare Sherry. She said she jumps every time I speak, so I just don't want to be too loud.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. All right, we're good. Yeah, Jay Logston usually is the one when he stands up and he is talking, he's very confident. In all the other hearings I've seen, he's been very confident. He's been very on point with what he brings, so on and so forth. He was speechless. I've never seen that man speechless. This guy was shutting them down left and right today.
Right.
It was crazy.
I mean, the international law
Yeah.
that he was throwing out there, that kind of threw me for a loop because I looked that up.
Mm-hmm.
And then I heard somebody else talking about it, and they were saying the international law is mostly, based on. Sorry, I just woke from a nap a little while
you're
ago.
okay. Take your time.
The international law is usually due to military stuff, like military law and stuff, and that's why I was like, why are they bringing international law? And they also said that that's not going to hold anything because you can't, the U.S. is their own judicial system. So, for them to be trying to use that's just going above and beyond,
Well, that told me they were really reaching for straws on that today. They were looking for anything they could find. No, I mean, that tells me two things, you guys. One, they kind of seems like they don't have anything. That's scary for Brian on this side. If he's claiming to be innocent, he doesn't have much to hold on to with this defense. Okay. Two, they're really, really reaching for anything they want. She's trying to get this off the table bad. Well, why is she trying so hard to get this off the table if she believes this man is innocent? You know what I'm saying?
I mean, the judge even told Jay Logston at one point, he said, your argument's about as flat as something else he said. I was like, whoa, he just might as well just told him, hey, shut up and sit down.
He did basically said as flat as anything you'll find. Yeah, that was like, whoa, okay. I understand.
He was kind of pissed off. He said, my timeline has already been blown to hell. You know what I mean? I was like, oh man, he doesn't hold back at all, does he?
He seemed pretty bothered with this today too. It was irritating. You could tell he was irritated with this. And I was just like, I mean, I kind of was irritated with this, to be honest with you, because I I like Anne. I think she's been a great defense lawyer. At least I thought so far. You know, she's brought stuff to the table that seemed like, okay, that's a good argument. That's this, that, and then this happened today, and I was like, what the hell is going on?
Right.
Is this not the Ann Taylor that I've been seeing, or is it? Here's the thing, or is it? And now that we have this new judge, it's a whole different party.
Do you have any thought on why Bill Thompson wasn't in the courtroom today?
He was there, but he was on Skype. He was in the courtroom on a screen. He was not live, I think, because he couldn't get here for whatever reason. I think he had something else going on in Moscow, and the drive to get there would have screwed up his whole schedule. So he came in via Skype. He didn't speak, though. I didn't hear him speak one time.
No.
Right.
That attorney for the state, he knows his stuff as well too. You know, he's pretty calm and
very confident and very quick. Thank you for bringing that up. That was going to be my next statement. This guy right here, guys, in the blue suit jacket over here, sitting there like this. Anything that the defense put up today, this guy came in like that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was one thing after another. There was nothing for him to wait on. So seriously, it was interesting.
So do you believe that, you know, if you're in Brian's shoes and you saw what just went down today, how would you be feeling, Dago?
I'd have been looking through a phone book.
Do you think he feels confident in his defense attorney still, or do you think he just like, oh, just a bad day?
I don't. Okay, if I were Brian, I would not have been comfortable after today. Today was a shit show for the defense, period. Okay. I guess you could look at it as if, okay, maybe this was a bad day, but this is an important part of this trial. This is the huge part of this trial. And I'm telling you, the judge did not take to any of this. None of it. Usually certain things the judges will magnetize to something that's being stated. This man was completely detached from everything they were talking about, in my opinion.
You know, another thing that I thought was interesting is he didn't want to let that expert up there on the stand. He's like, that's just going to waste more time. You know what I mean? It's like, It seems like the defense just wants to prolong and prolong and prolong and prolong.
Yeah.
And he's like, I don't see any significance how an expert can have any say about the law. You know, that's what the attorneys are there for. The experts, it's not their job to, you know, dictate the law.
Yeah. Agreed. You know, and I think Anne was not as prepared for today as she probably thought she was. Maybe she seemed a little taken aback. Alyssa Massoth she was a whole other story. She was kind of irritating me a little bit.
Right.
He was out there too, but I think that defense thought maybe they were as prepared as they should have been for this, and I don't think they expected this to go like it did. Truly, that's my opinion. It doesn't mean it's factual. And Pebbles just said this is what she expected. They have to argue to have the death penalty dropped in order to be considered effective counsel and have it on record. No, I agree. I agree.
Exactly.
I just think that maybe they felt that what they laid out would have been received a little bit better than it was. That's just, again, how I saw it.
I mean, then when the judge asked her point blank, well, if you believe that the firing squad, that the lethal injection are unconstitutional or, you know, cruel and unusual punishment, what
is?
What would you recommend?
She didn't have an answer for that because I don't think she was prepared to answer that question. Right.
I mean, that kind of like, I was thinking, wow, he really thought that out. You know what I mean?
And it was quick too. He was quick to drop that. And that's what told me, that's what made me think that they weren't as prepared as they probably should have been.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because that would have been something I would have looked at. And I was kind of like, that's actually a good question. If you think this is unconstitutional, what's your answer to this then? And, you know, and there wasn't one, guys. Just saying.
I mean,
Yeah.
people have been asking, well, why were they arguing to get the death penalty off the table? Well, the whole time from day one, they've been talking about a fair trial, and this is just kind of going through the motion for a fair trial. You know, you want
Right.
to make sure you're going above and beyond to make sure that this man's rights are not infringed in any way, and I'm glad they're doing that. You know, but doesn't mean that the defense is going to win every hearing
Right.
or lose. You know, it's just part of the pageantry, if you will.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree with you, sir. I
Yeah.
do definitely agree with you. I welcome Matahari, even in beautiful people. I have a friend coming to join us soon. Her name's Dino. Please welcome her. Oh, of course we would, Matahari. Absolutely. As always with everyone. Yeah. There well, I'm gonna play some of this. Thank you
All right.
I appreciate you being up here with us tonight. 12
Yeah,
gauge. I really
appreciate
do. I
you
love
having
your
me, man.
Oh, anytime, anytime. I appreciate your insight too. I'm going to play through some of this and we're going to talk about what we're seeing and hearing too. That's the whole point, guys. So, again, share it out, guys. Anybody else you think would be interested in breaking this down with us tonight, bring them on in. I appreciate it very much.
It seems to me that was a particularized incident wherein Mr. Creech, the execution really hadn't even begun yet in the sense that they couldn't locate a vein. I don't see how that issue is universal.
Hold on. I'm going to back this up just a tinge so that the people that just popped in can catch that too. Sorry. Here we go.
Is more recent between 2010 studies and a book that was published that is relied upon by Dr. Wolf. That's not contained in the declaration. And I would like to make that part of the record too from her. So if the court continues to have her testimony not be allowed, I would ask that I be allowed after the fact to make that part of the record.
You can submit that and I will then hear any objections to that and I will consider that.
Okay. Thank you, Your Honor. Then moving on to our argument, and I will largely not repeat what's in our brief since the court has had a chance to take a look at that. We think that the court ought to strike the death penalty in this case and not allow the case to go forward as a death penalty case because Idaho does not have a current means of executing anybody. When somebody sits on death row and there's no real means of executing them, that is dehumanizing to that person. That's similar.
Say there's no means under Idaho law, the method of execution is lethal injection, and if unavailable, then the firing squad. You rely significantly on the idea that lethal injection is not available based upon the quote unquote botched execution of Mr. Creech. It seems to me that was a particularized incident wherein Mr. Creech, the execution really hadn't even begun yet in the sense that they couldn't locate a vein. I don't see how that issue is universal.
Your Honor, I would agree that Mr. Creech's, the situation that happened to him was unique to him. I don't think he's the only person that has ever had that happen. I'm not in the state of Idaho, but I think that that's happened before when the means of execution couldn't be employed at the time. But since we're talking about Idaho, I think we should look at what happened in the Pizzuto case too. And in that case, there was no ability to obtain the chemicals to kill him with. And so his execution, his death warrant expired without him being executed. After that happened, Idaho passed legislation that would allow the Department of Corrections to obtain the chemicals to kill somebody in secrecy. After that happened, there's still a lot of difficulty getting the chemicals because pharmaceutical companies don't like to have
They have obtained them twice now, since then.
They've obtained them twice for Creech, yes. Now, something has changed in the death chamber for how they will try to execute Creech. I don't know what that is. That's probably one of those things that we'll learn a little bit more about through Creech's.
Well, I think that they're going to utilize a central venous catheter. In other words, accessing a central.
I have it turned up as far as I can, SRB. I'm so sorry. It was kind of quiet.
Vein rather than a peripheral vein my understanding that there's federal law approving that procedure, as well as a recent decision by the district court approving that procedure. I think that's the difference.
And I think, looking forward, we just don't have those answers yet. We don't know how that's going to unfold. I don't believe his execution is moving forward as is scheduled. And if we look at the immediate history in Idaho, and that's what I'm looking at when I'm standing before you representing Mr. Kohberger and saying to you that Idaho doesn't have a real means of executing someone.
So at this point, I got a question. Do you guys think that she put this together based on what happened with Creech? Or do you think this was, do you think that, how can I say this? Yes, he does speak softly. I'm sorry, guys. Do you think that this is something Ann put together because of what happened to Creech, or was this something that she was basing on and then just added this to?
I think she's pulling at straws. If you want my opinion, I think she's trying to find anything that she can.
I think she added this to her defense when that happened. It became convenient. I agree, Mom. She's pulling at straws for sure.
Yep. I think she's panicking because she knows that this is not going to go over well in small town Idaho. And she's freaking out and trying to pick anything she can to bring a defense.
Right. I think
I
agree.
All that big shit in the beginning, and I think now, like, it's set in that she's probably not going to have such a high-profile resume when, in my opinion, she loses, and they put his ass on a firing squad.
And I wonder. It's a little unnerving, probably for Brian, if he understands this, being that that's a recent situation that she's throwing out there. It almost makes me wonder. That's why I asked that question. I see there's people with different feelings, and I really appreciate you guys being so interactive. I love this. Pebble says she does this in all her death penalty cases. She's been able to get a case of death penalty dropped for an Alford plea in Idaho. Oh yeah, I heard about that, but this is just convenient that this happened with Creech now, I think, and she's using that to start with that and see how she gets knocked down, or if he allows for it or whatever. But yeah, I thought it was interesting that this was one of the first things she went to, which, I mean, it is definitely convenient that it was available for her to talk about. You know what I mean? So,
and who wants to be sitting there, not on trial yet, per se, headed to trial, and hear about a botched execution? Like,
sure, I agree. I do agree.
That's gotta, like, make the hair stand up on the back of your neck.
I know it's going to make him look at his defense team, like, I think, like what 12 Gauge said, like, hey, what's going on here? You know what I mean? Do I trust this? Am I going to be okay? That kind of feeling. I'm guessing, in my opinion, at least.
Well, my whole thing was whenever she was talking about, being on death row for all those years with the unknown and how this man was going to die. I mean, that's kind of dramatic, don't you think?
Very much so.
If you're gone through the appeals process and they do find you guilty at the end, then that's your fate. He's not the only one. If he does get found guilty and loses all the appeals, he's not going to be the first person in the world to ever face the death penalty.
No, absolutely not. You're right. You're absolutely right.
So.
Absolutely. I do agree. I agree.
I mean, that's just my thoughts on it. I'm glad that people have their different opinions, like I always say. And, we agree to disagree and we shake hands and we're still friends at the end of the day, right?
Mm-hmm. That's what it's all about. Absolutely what it's all about. Like I said before, 12 Gauge, if we all agreed on everything, it would be a very boring world. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's probably possible, Cap. Kohberger probably asked Taylor, "Are you expecting to lose?" That's probably what he was thinking, you know? Why are you fighting so hard to pull this death penalty off the table? Are you not confident in getting me off? You know, that's got to be some kind of a thought and process in his mind. So, definitely. So,
I mean,
and
I would think these last 2 years would be more anxiety than anything.
mhm.
You know, that he sat, locked up for 2 years. He had the right to a speedy trial. He went and said, I don't want to do that because I want to see all the evidence that's against me, right?
Oh yeah.
So they gave him what he wanted. Now all of a sudden they're wanting to backtrack and go back to the beginning. I mean, because they feel that his rights were infringed upon.
Yep. That's something that should have been talked about way back then. You know what I'm saying? It should have been looked into at that point before this was even allowed, in my opinion.
Right.
He should have been counseled on what then again, I would imagine Brian probably does know a lot of this because of his schooling and stuff. Not every bit of it, but some of it. So he
Right.
would have known what that would lead to. But hearing that stuff about the speedy trial thing, I was just like, oh, well, that makes a big difference, doesn't it?
Mhm.
And now, not to mention, guys, we probably okay. Let's say Brian does get welcome, Miss Amy Buenas noches to you. Let's say Brian gets convicted. He gets the death penalty. He goes to death row. He's going to be on death row for the next 20 years, possibly more. Okay. And like I said today, what if Idaho, for some whatever reason, abolishes the death penalty at that point within the next 20 years for some reason? Or they come up with some other way to do this, or what if they launch you to Mars for your penalty or some weird shit? You know what I'm just saying? Like, what if something changes? Like, I don't know. I know this is protocol to do in a trial like this, but
Yeah.
the emphasis on these specific little things for this are just kind of off to me, so I don't know. It could be like the reason what not to change the subject, but just to give you guys an insight into something. The thing that brought me to true crime as a young person, I was 12 years old. One of my very good friends was murdered. Okay. He was murdered at 12 years old, and it was brutal. Okay. They did a lot of things to him. They cut off body parts. They lit him on fire. They sodomized him. They did multiple things to him. 2 adult males did this to him. 12-year-old little boy. And he got the death penalty. One got the death penalty. One got life in prison. The one that got life in prison died from, I think it was the pandemic. Okay. But the other one's been on death row for 40 years going on. He's done all of his appeals. He's done everything he can possibly do. And he's still sitting here on death row. So this is Ohio. I mean, most states have the same policies per se. So we got, if and when Brian gets the death penalty, we may not even be here, guys. To see it. You know what I'm saying? We may not even be here. So who knows what's going to happen with this? But I can guarantee you that the judge probably won't be here anymore. Ann will be, if she is, any of these people that are playing in this game here probably won't be with us anymore. So what the hell? It's weird that this is happening in some ways, in my opinion. That's all I'm saying. So,
but you got some states that have a fast track.
Yeah, I don't think Idaho is one of those states, though. I think it's Texas. There's a few states that Texas is one of them, I think, and another California. No. We talked about Kentucky, Texas.
Oh, Texas has an express lane for the death penalty.
Yeah. Do not skip go. Do not collect 200. Go right to the front of the line. 100%.
Right. It's like they got to meet a quota every year. We got to execute like 20 people this year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they don't play over there for sure. Walt said sometimes DP just rears its ugly head and people abuse the punishment. Hopefully the road forward will be clean and not muddled. And that's a good point, Walt, but I don't know. Pebble says,
to be fair, the death penalty has never been a popular topic. It's almost like politics. You're going to one half to one half of the other.
Exactly.
It's like.
Yeah.
But if we didn't have it, what would be the alternative? I mean, like they were saying in the trial today about the aggravators. Well, what if the criminals that get caught with these aggravators, they learn that if they don't do these aggravators, then they're not going to get held to first degree murder or or even facing the death penalty.
Right. Absolutely. It is a touchy subject, and yeah, no, I agree with you on what you just said.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sherry they just had an execution in North Carolina, I believe it is, or South. I always get confused where she's at, North or South Carolina, but still, yeah. Amy says in Costa Rica, we're having I thought you were talking. Well, be safe, Amy. Please be safe. Stay away from the flooding and all that. There's so much bad weather going on.
Yeah.
It is, Rowena. It's a very difficult subject for people to talk about because, I've even said I'm not a huge fan of it, but when it comes to something like this case or cases like Madeline's case, Stephen Stern's stuff like that, yeah, it needs to be on the table for sure. There's cases that I'm kind of like, I don't know about it, but in cases like these, yes, I definitely agree that it should be something for sure put on the table. So,
I mean, I don't remember people fighting this hard for Bundy. I really don't. But I wasn't very old when all that was happening either. So they could have been. I don't know. Does anybody remember them fighting this hard for the death penalty to be taken off the table for Ted Bundy?
when I looked into his story and covered it and stuff, I don't remember seeing that anywhere, but I could be wrong and missing something. Anybody that lived through that in here, if you remember that, that's a good question. That's a good question he's putting out there because I don't remember hearing about that either. Matahari asked, I don't know if anyone knows the answer, but when was the last person executed in Idaho? That's a good question, Matahari, because I can't remember. Molly, you're in Idaho. Do you remember? Alicia said 2012. So it's been a minute. Okay. 12 years. It's been a while, that's for sure. I don't know. Let's go ahead and let's listen to some more and see what we get from this. And Leslie says 12 gauge. At first they dis until he escaped. Then everyone gave up on him, especially the church here in New. Oh, she's talking about Bundy. At first they fought for him until he escaped, and then everyone gave up on him, especially the church in Utah. Gotcha. Thank you.
Okay.
And then they just had that screw up with Creech. So, yeah. Wow. Very crazy. Very crazy. Bundy had lawyers trying to help him get him off. I did know that, but when Brandy says I don't think he should get the DP if he is guilty, he should just rot in prison. Well, see, that's the thing. I've said that too on certain cases. There's certain cases that I feel like you should get life without parole to have to sit and think about what you've done. The problem is with a lot of people that commit these crimes, they don't have compassion. They don't have the ability to feel bad. So sitting and rotting they're just getting to live their life. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Now, if you have a conscience and you have the ability to feel bad and be upset, that's a whole different story than good. But if you don't, there's nothing's going to be punishable to you. So that's where the death penalty should come into effect, in my opinion. So that's a good point.
Kind of like with Richard Ramirez, he died a natural death in prison, the Night Stalker.
Mm-hmm.
Also, like BTK right now, he's living in there as if he was almost living out here, really without consequence.
Right. I mean, truly, the only thing is he can't leave. Other than that, he's living a normal life.
Yeah.
Matahari said, looked up for reference. There's 9 people on death row in Idaho. And it seems like they don't like the death penalty on the table unless it's absolutely necessary. Well, it's a good point. Thank you, Matahari.
Yeah.
Sherry says, if you commit a crime like this, prison is a setup for you. Yeah, it kind of is. Yeah, I agree.
I mean, have you guys ever thought that, Bill Thompson's a plea bargain history type of guy? So for him
Yep.
to put the death penalty on the table, that goes against
Yeah.
his whole belief in sentencing. So I don't know if that says anything about the evidence they have or if it doesn't. But I would think that if you're generally looking to plea people out, you're not just going to stick the death penalty on one person
No.
out
And
of
there's
so
right.
many.
Right. And there's been no talk of any kind of plea deals on this at all. Not that Brian would accept it, but there's been no talk of that I've even remotely heard anywhere. So,
Right.
of all people to make a deal, I would think Thompson would try to. Not heard a
Right.
word about it.
Right. Yeah.
Nothing yet. Nothing at all. So, I don't know. It's interesting. It is an interesting thought. Pebble says, I respect y'all's opinions, understand why. I'm just not a fan of death penalty for several reasons. If guilty, I think it's an easy. Well, that's what I was saying, Pebbles. In some senses, I feel like it is. They commit the crime and then they get to die. They don't have to deal with any consequences. They're just dead. That's why I think in some senses they should have to sit in prison for the rest of whatever natural life they have, without any option for parole, and think about what they did and fester and rot and deal with whatever they deal with inside. But in some senses, though, that's like you're getting, 3 cots in a hot, you got a roof over your head, you got free food, prison is not like it used to be, guys. They have TVs and they have tablets, they have pool tables, recreation rooms, they have a full library, they have computer access, they have baseball and softball teams. The only difference from living a normal life is truly they can't leave whenever they feel like it. And, the food's not the greatest,
Right.
but it's not that much of a punishment for committing these horrendous crimes. So,
Right. And there's a difference between committing one murder and committing 4.
yeah, right. 100%.
If there would have just been one, well, I would kind of think, well, that's a little extreme, but still.
Yeah.
But 4.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's 4 lives you've taken with your own 2 hands, and 4 lives that you've ruined completely. 4 families' lives, not just their lives, but the families of the victims too. Their lives are completely ruined forever now at this point. They're the possibility for these families to have grandchildren from these kids, to have birthdays and holidays taken away. All of that's gone, guys. So there's 4 full families' lives that are completely ruined at this point, not just the 4 victims, not to mention them. Yeah, that's a lot. That's a whole lot, 12 gauge. You're absolutely right. So there's got to be a punishment that, in my opinion, that would match up to this, I would think, and that's hard because I agree with Pebbles. Sometimes you got to think that that's too easy for them. They get to just do what they did and just leave the world. Meanwhile, everybody else suffers still. I agree with her on that point. But at the
You're
same
right.
time, at the same time, I challenge myself with that because, what if this person, because in some senses I've even seen people that get life sentences without the possibility of parole that do eventually get paroled at some sense sometime because of strange circumstances. What if that were to happen with this guy? That's another thing. If he gets the death penalty and he's gone, that can't be a mistake that happens down the road. So,
And you have to think, depending on what state it is, it could be natural life. Like here in
Yeah.
Florida, you get life in prison, you get natural life. That's 25 years. That's horseshit.
yeah, they would have to specify no without the possibility of parole, or give somebody 5 life terms or something like that,
Life plus a day,
Yeah, right. It's a hard decision. I really do understand and feel where you're coming from, Pebbles, truly. And then not to mention, the other side of things with my situation with Danny Lee Hill, that's the guy's name that killed my friend. Me, myself, who was a friend of the victim that he murdered, have been paying for him to live in prison. out of our tax dollars. That pays for him to live for the past 40 years. I've been feeding him. Me,
Yeah.
not me personally, but you know what I'm trying to break up with this, okay?
Yeah.
I've been feeding him. I've been clothing him. I've been putting a roof over his head. All of those things. And that's
Medical,
hard.
yeah.
That's hard to take, you know. It's a hard fact to process. So it's a bounce back either way with it. It sucks a little bit. Oh, it's okay, Pebble. Thank you, hon, so much. But yeah, it's definitely an interesting, debatable conversation. I'll say that much.
And before people start, saying that, most of the time when you have an opinion about the death penalty or you have an opinion about the criminal justice system, you've been exposed to it, just like what you're saying, Dago. I've had some family members that have had aggravated crimes that spent 28 of 30 years behind bars. The other one did 18 of 20 years aggravated.
Mhm.
So these family members, they were gone. They were being missed by other family.
Yeah.
And it's like it was hard for the family to accept that these family members were gone in prison, and
Mhm.
it's just as hard on the families that it is the person doing the time.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
a lot of people don't understand that, who've never had somebody locked up. It's sometimes harder on the family to do the time than the person incarcerated, because they're constantly worried, is the person going to get hurt? Are they going to get sick? Or, do they need anything? I don't have the money to send them. They need this, they need that. We can't afford it. Oh my God, what if, they this happened to end our life? Or, what if something goes wrong and there's a riot? Or, it's
Yeah.
during the pandemic, any of that.
There's a lot. There's a lot that goes into it, right? And not to mention something else Pebbles threw out there that I've taken into account as well myself. She says I also take into account the psychology behind it, and that how that it affects the person that is in charge of making sure that this person is put to death, because it is a team of people behind putting someone to death. The person that has that job, any of those people, that's horrible. Okay. Not to
Yeah.
mention the jury. The jury are the ones that decide whether this person lives or dies. That's a decision that they have to live with for the rest of their life. Agreed. And that doesn't fare well with people sometimes, as well as like she said, the psychological effects that this could have on the team of people that are the death team, as they call them. Putting the person to death too. That's another whole thing that hurts other people. It causes PTSD in some senses. There's a whole lot that goes into this, period, folks. There really is. So, it's an interesting conversation topic, topic of conversation. Sorry, I can't talk sometimes. And that's another one too. The firing squad. That's a whole separate thing for me. Imagine being the person that's part of that squad that has to stand there and shoot somebody and kill them.
Yeah, I heard somebody talking about that earlier, and they said the history of the firing squad, there's always one that has a blank
Yeah.
in their gun. So you really don't ever know if you were the one that, did the
Yep.
deal.
Yeah, which is
Kind of
good.
like the person, yeah, it's kind of like they used to do two people flicking the switch on the electric chair. Neither one would know which one
Right.
actually, conducted the.
Who was the one that pushed it, right?
Do you agree, Dago, that the death penalty originally was used as a deterrent?
Yes.
So that it would show other people or potential criminals to be like, look, if you go to the extreme of harming people, or you're no longer able to walk among society, this
Absolutely.
is the end result. Not necessarily used as, okay, well, you committed a crime, automatically we're going to kill you.
No,
I don't think
no,
that
no.
was ever the intent.
No, if you go back to the days of the gallows, we'll say that, or public hangings, okay? Public hangings are a perfect example of what 12 Gauge just said. I read about all this stuff, many documentaries. A public hanging was put in place purposely to show the rest of the public, if you do this, this is what's going to happen to you. In turn, it's a legal deterrent. Unless you want to end up here, you don't commit this crime, And it did work in a lot of ways. It did work in a lot of ways. People oh my God, look at what just happened. I don't want to end that way, so I'm not going to do this.
Right.
And the whole psychological aspect to it is something that works nowadays. It's a little different, same with the gallows. Way back in the days when they would use like the guillotine and they would behead people because of this kind of stuff. End result, you do these things, this is what happens to you. So yes, complete total deterrent method.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I remember that one, PJ. Welcome, by the way. When they hung Hussein, that was wow. That was purposely done the way they did that. That was crazy for that. So Rose says the firing squad should be outlawed. I don't know how I feel about that one. It's a different. It gives off a different vibe to me than anything else. Than lethal injection, than the electric chair, than the gas chamber. The gas chamber and lethal injection are a lot more humane, in my opinion, I guess you could say, for lack of better terms. The electric chair is like a torture device. So, it's like, I don't know. The firing squad is just way set off to the side to me in a complete separate type feeling. Mom, go ahead. Go ahead, 12 gauge.
To be having a hood over your face and not really knowing when the moment's going to come, you're there 1 minute, you're gone the next. I mean, it just
right. I do agree. I
don't think any of these ways are humane. But I don't believe our founding fathers really were thinking about people's feelings and the law.
No,
they're the reason why law does not have feelings and emotions attached to it. It is what it is, and this is kind of like what he was saying today. He was saying, death penalty was never derived to be a popular
right.
result.
Right. Yeah, and I had to agree with at one point Doodle was talking to Doodlebug, and I think a lot of us agreed that when it comes down to when they brought up the whole, well, what about his anxiety and how he feels about this and that, I was really shocked. Like, what about the victim's anxiety, and what about their family's anxiety and things like that? Like, are we truly supposed to worry about if this man's found guilty? Are we supposed to step back and worry about his feelings at this point? Is it inhumane of us to not do that? That doesn't make us a bad person because we feel like this person that murdered 4 people shouldn't have feelings. We shouldn't care what his feelings are because he wasn't thinking about their feelings. You know what I mean? It's a weird conversation piece with that too, I think. So
I think it's a generational thing, because I heard that you're in your 50s or you're about to be. So I'm in my 50s, early 50s as well.
Yeah.
So, growing up, you just accepted certain things as what they were,
Yeah.
Kind of like you grew up, you heard, like somebody just said in the chat, you grew up hearing stories from other countries. You stole, you got your hand chopped off.
Yep.
You didn't think about, oh my God, what were they feeling? What poor people, they're going to get their hand chopped off. No, there was a means to an end. And as callous as that sounds, I'm not trying to be callous. I'm just saying that, the law has no feelings attached to it. We have the feelings attached to how we feel about certain things.
Agreed. I do agree. Mom?
What do you want my opinion on first?
All of it. I'm sorry. I was trying to get you a few minutes ago and I didn't get a chance to, but go ahead, please.
So, I mean, the death penalty goes back to the beginning of time, pretty much. So, I mean, that's something that has been around, however you want to look at it. If you want to look at it as a death penalty or public execution or whatever the case may be, lethal injection has its tendencies to go wrong. So, I mean, if you want to talk an inhumane portion of it, lethal injection's not always a great way to go. Okay, say they use lethal injection and the person lives through it. Guess what? you can't try them again because that's double jeopardy in this great United States. So the firing squad, I mean, that's pretty safe proof. You put 10, 12 people, men and women armed, you know, 1 or 3 of them actually have ammo that's not blanks. It's going to get the job done. I mean, in the past year, we've seen the gas chamber used. So I'm not against the death penalty, and I respect anybody's opinion that is. I'm not against it. But you also have to take into effect, I grew up in Kentucky. I grew up in a state with the electric chair. I lived 30 minutes from the prison what they used to put people to death in. I grew up in a time where you were watching the 10 o'clock news and a banner would come across the bottom of the screen, or you were watching MASH at midnight and a banner would come across the bottom of the screen saying, don't call the police, don't call the electric company, your lights are going to flicker. And they would tell the person's name, their date of birth, and let you know that they're fixing to execute somebody. So in my personal opinion, I believe that it's a cleaner way. It may seem brutal to some people, and it may even seem brutal coming from me, but I feel like it's a cleaner way to put him out, let him go. If he did this, and my opinion's pretty clear on how I feel about Kohberger, is the DNA is there. I mean, we all, even with, I hate to compare the two cases, but with Delphi, you have your pro and your side of the case, and the people that are like, oh, he's innocent, there's no DNA. Well, if you look at the trending and the people that are trending, that opinion is the same people that feel like Kohberger's innocent, but yet we have DNA on him. I don't think it's fair for him to sit in prison. I don't give a damn about his humanity, I tell you right now, because I don't care about his emotions. I don't care about it being humane for him to sit there. If he's found guilty of doing this to these 4 babies, to hell with him. Let him sit in that prison. Let him feel the wrath of sitting in a prison alone and knowing that you're busted, bub. You didn't commit the perfect crime. You took 4 people's lives that didn't even have a chance to start their life yet. And, I saw today that they don't have a place built for the firing squad. So they're looking at the financial aspect of it and then the manpower to get it built. And like I said on Twitter, I said, I'm pretty sure there's a bunch of us that would volunteer to go help build the damn thing if that's what's needed, if he's found guilty for doing this. But what I feel like is this is going to get drug out so long, and not to be macabre, but I'm probably not going to be around to see this through the end if he does get the death penalty. But I feel like it should meet the crime. You went in, you took 4 people's lives. For what reason other than getting your own rocks off? Because that's all I can see. I don't see any good reason to take those babies' lives. You took their lives, in my opinion, because you wanted to see if all the training and research and everything that you've been through and all the schooling that you've went through, could you commit the perfect crime? We know who he looked up to, who his heroes were. We already know who he was trying to communicate with. There's something wrong. So I give 2 shits about his humanity. And that's,
I mean, the one thing that
my opinion.
was brilliantly stated, Mom. I
Agreed.
enjoyed that. I enjoyed that. Thank you. Thank you for saying that. That was awesome. The
I
way
mean,
you articulated that.
Yeah, I agree with him. That's a good way to put it. And I agree with you. Once I see that proof, that's who I am with that. I've never ever in 2 years claimed that I think Brian Kohberger is innocent or guilty. I have said, though, I question the DNA, like you said, the DNA's there. You're right. My question is how? That's the question and the problem that I have is how is that the DNA there when there was no connection to him and there was no DNA on him or anything he owned? That's where my struggle has always been with this damn case. How? You know what I mean? And I said this earlier today during the hearing. I want Brian to be the one after the past 2 years of this man sitting here and nobody else being looked at, talked about, spoken about, looked into. It's always been this one man. So to me, it has to be him. Because if
And
not,
if you look at the other side, sorry to interrupt you, but if you look at the other side of it, okay, so the touch DNA on the sheath is all we have. The crime scene was handled, and again, I'm not caught bashing by any means, but you guys have all been here with from the beginning of this case, just like I have.
I agree.
What if there was more DNA and it got corrupted from having 500 people in and out of the freaking apartment? You know, what if there was more footprints, whether they were latent or not? What if there was more footprints? But we lost that evidence because everybody that wanted an extra star or a little pin on their badge decided they were going to show up at this crime scene. And again, I understand small town. I'm from a small town.
Right.
I'm from a small town where one of the first serial killers actually started killing people in our time. So this is not something I'm new to. But this isn't considered a serial killer because it's a mass murder and you got the red tape there too. But that's what concerns me is we have this one piece of touch DNA that they were able to run down and match to him. Well, we know his mama didn't do it. Well, I mean, I would like to think she didn't. We know his daddy didn't do it. They've got this data, you know, on him.
And you know, another thing that I don't believe people really understand as well, through these 2 years, y'all do realize that the prosecutor, Bill Thompson, and the judge at one point, John Judge, and this judge, are the two people that can, at any time they believe that this case is infringing on any rights or there's not enough evidence to continue, they can release him. Y'all do understand that, right? So if any of these people involved, the prosecutor or the judges, would have ever seen any evidence or any kind of rights being infringed leading up to this eventual trial, they could have freed Brian. They didn't even ask for a bail. You know why? Because probably, in my opinion, he was a no-show for that $10 traffic ticket of his, failure to appear. So you're going to give bail to somebody who can't even go to a $10 failure or $10 no seatbelt ticket? I don't know. I could be wrong. I could be reaching. You know, that's just my opinion.
Right. And to follow the man across the United States. And then, you know, if you were there to watch it unfold, to follow him across the United States and say, oh, no, we weren't casing him. That wasn't us.
I'll never believe that those two stops had.
We weren't doing that. It was coincidental. Bullshit.
I don't believe that. I never did. I believe that those were done on purpose, truly. I can't give you an exact reason as to why. I think they were just watching him, truly, but they'll never admit to that because they've already stated that it wasn't. You know what I mean? So regardless, I still think those were done on purpose. But shit, I had a thought and I lost it. Damn it.
I've been having that all night on here.
I do it all the time. It's actually called you just pulled a Dago. That's what they called it a long time ago. I do it all the damn time. It's my ADHD. My ADHD is going 24/7 and it's on high power right now. So yeah, oh yeah, they were 100% watching him. They knew then, they were watching him then, they were following him, they wanted to make sure that he wasn't taking off and going somewhere that he shouldn't be. That's again, this isn't everything that we talk about here, guys, other than factual information that we know of is pure speculation, 100% alleged, absolutely all of our opinions, period. So
Exactly.
Anyway, go ahead, you two. I have completely lost my thought. I hate when that happens. It'll come back.
Mom,
later.
go ahead.
Come on.
So, you know, I just want to see justice for them. I just want to see justice for them.
Of course.
And it feels like, you know, this has been drawn out long enough. The families have been drugged through this long enough. Now we've got the venue change. Now we're hours away from where it happened. What's going to be the next? What's going to come up next? You know, What is going to be the next little
I don't
ploy
think
that we try to pull out of the hat?
I don't think there is going to be anymore. I think that, again, going back to Judge Hippler is not the one. Judge may have been. They granted the venue change, so on and so forth. They're going to ask for whatever they're going to ask for. You know, that's going to happen. This man is not going to give it like they probably think he is. I like him. I think and that's going to be for both sides, guys, not just the defense. He's not going to give in to either side and give them whatever they want on a silver platter like Judge did. Okay. I think he's going to be fair. I think he's going to be harsh. And I think he's going to be on point and strict with this, which is what he needs to be in a case like this. Any judge should be like that on a case like this, truly, to be able to bring true justice to this.
And it's actually a breath of fresh air to have a judge like this. How many cases have we watched lately that, you know, and I hate to go back to Letitia Stouch, but really, in my opinion, honestly, that's the last good damn judge we've had in these high profile cases.
Agreed. Welcome, Misfits. Wonderful to have you here tonight. I will say this. I love the judge, and it's not very high profile, but I love the judge in the Sarah Boone case. He wasn't playing with her. She raped the system. Sorry for the term, but she really did. She tried in a bad way, and he stopped it. He was done playing, and that's justice, in my opinion, for George. The Leilani Simon trial. That judge, I loved her. Okay? She played that game like you wouldn't believe, and that hand perfect. And again, that's justice to me too. But this case, this is 4 young adults that had their lives taken before they were even able to start. Okay, they had their futures completely set up and in front of them to lead beautiful lives, and it's gone like that. This, okay, Matahari, thank you, hon. Oh, yeah, that's another one. Pebbles said the Alec Baldwin judge. Another great judge. You know, that case is not as high profile in this sense. It's very high profile because of who it was, but
right.
But in trials like this, no. And I'm almost glad. I'll say this much. I wasn't happy about the change of venue because I was and I wasn't. I wanted to make sure that Brian gets fair trial. If Brian, just to ensure Brian's the one that did this, okay? Now, I'm in the boat where I'm in between until I have to see proof, absolute proof that Brian did this. And then when they say, yes, he did, they show the proof he did, let's go right now. Let's do it right now. Until then, I'm in the middle still, just waiting to see.
And that's Anne's job, Dago, as well. You know, her job is to defend her client. It's not that, even if she says, you know, my client's innocent, that's not necessarily what she believed. That's her job.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, she's going to say, you know, Brian, I'm going to tell the court, you know, I have doubts on your innocence. Come on now.
Right.
She would never do that, you know? And her job is to maintain a fair ability for him to go before a jury of his peers to see what they're going to say about his freedom. That is it.
Yeah.
Like I believe people put too much emphasis on whether she's on his side or whether she's not. Whether Bill Thompson's on, you know, is trying to get him and he had the bias against him and all this other stuff. You know, at the end of the day, and
that's their job.
They're doing their job.
Right.
She has other clients. Bill has other clients. You know, all these attorneys have other clients. It's not personal for them.
Right.
I would believe.
Right. But yeah, and that's what I mean. Like, I wanted to see him get a fair trial just as much as I do with anybody else. As much as I couldn't stand her, and I mean I couldn't stand her, looking at her raises my blood pressure. Even Leilani Simon, okay, I feel she deserves a fair trial. As much as we knew what she did, as much as none of us liked her, she still deserves that fair trial, folks. She's just like any of us do. There's Dino. Welcome and good to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I appreciate you. I love your avatar. Wonderful to have you here with us tonight. I hope you enjoy yourself here. Thank you for joining us. I wanted him to get a fair trial, and I do agree that the venue it would have been damn near impossible to find a jury that was unbiased in that area. So I kind of felt that. But at the same time, I didn't want the venue be changed because how far it is for the families to have to travel. It's just an inconvenience to the families, and they definitely don't need any more inconveniences. That was my biggest issue with it right there. Okay. So that's kind of how I felt about that. But at the same time, now that the venue change has happened, I'm kind of grateful because now that I'm seeing this judge for what he's done, it makes me think that, okay, if Brian is innocent by some chance, that the other judge may not have been able to process that correctly, because I just don't think he was with it like this guy is. He wasn't as strict, for one. It seemed like he kind of gave in to Ann a lot. Okay. And whether it's fair or not fair, I don't know. I'm kind of torn with this whole thing, but I like this guy now, and I'm glad that it happened for that reason. And I'm sad that it happened for other reasons, if that makes any sense. I think he's going to do good with this.
That's how I feel. Like I said, I hate it that it's going to be so much further for the families to travel, and then hotel stays and all this other stuff, and losing that comfort of home when they've already lost their children. But on the other hand, when you look at it, from what I've seen of this judge, I like him too, and I'm glad that he's not bowing down to either side, because Judge just, and no disrespect to Judge, but
that's what
it just seemed like he was really timid and just too like poodle. We don't need a poodle in this case. We need a pit bull.
Yes, and he was not a pit bull white. He was a pushover from both sides. I agree. Like the prosecution could argue something, and he would kind of, okay, and yeah, he just seemed too lackadaisy and not focused like he probably should be. And again, I'm the same way. I don't mean it.
Let me take 2 months to decide, and we might look at it, and
yeah,
I don't know. I think 2030 does sound good and I'm being sarcastic, but still.
You're not far off, Mom. You're not far off.
agree.
Pretty close to what he was doing. And it's like, damn, bro, what are you doing? Come on now. Come on. Let's be honest. And like this guy said, today, like 12 Gauge brought up, yeah, well, my timeline's pretty screwed up as it is. He's not playing, folks. The man is not playing around with anybody, and I like that a lot. So I'll give it that. Welcome, Sergeant. Smell good. Good to have you in here tonight, sir. I hope you're being safe, and once again, appreciate your service, sir.
I think we've been given a glimpse today at what to come, and people that have wanted evidence, and people have wanted fairness, and all this other stuff. The onion's starting to peel. And this is the very beginning, I believe, that people are actually going to see more and more of actually what they do have versus what we've been told out of speculation and all this other stuff, what people have.
Absolutely.
And the onion's starting to peel. There was all these motions that were given today, and he went through them like there were nothing in a day. Where the other judge took, months?
Yeah, like Mom said, let me look at it for a couple weeks, and I'll get back to you leap year of 2030, and we'll decide by then. Anybody would say at the same time, I really want to kind of push this along, but I don't know. I got to go take a shit. I'll be back in a little while, and I'm going to have lunch. Come on, let's move this along,
Go grab some coffee out of my office, and then I'll come back, and,
And
did you notice around the idea?
Did you notice how many breaks this guy took today? Not many. Yeah. He took one break and a lunch break that I saw, and that was after quite a long period of time. Welcome, Heather Fitzgerald. Good to see you tonight, dear Jeffrey. Good to see you tonight, Jeffrey. By the way, guys, there's a link pinned in chat. I have an open panel tonight. I would love to hear your guys' thoughts, theories, opinions, and feelings on what went on today. Jeff, you're more than welcome to jump up here. I always love your insight as well. That goes for any of you guys. So feel free at any time to jump up. The only one rule is I just need you to show me your beautiful face backstage for about 30 seconds so I can make sure I'm seeing your face and not your waist. Okay. After that, you can come up here and you can shut it down like this if you want to. That's all I want to make sure of. That's it.
I think we need to
Oh.
see Heather Fitzgerald for once. She needs to show her face.
Oh, Heather's been up here before.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah. Not recently, but it's been a while.
Oh, wow. I missed that.
And Jeff, I agree with Jeff. I do agree with Jeff as much as I like Ann Taylor. Believe me, guys, I do. Ann ran the show in the judge's courtroom. That's a fact. Judge's courtroom, she was the boss, in my opinion. That's again just my opinion. There's going to be people that would disagree with me. That's how I feel, though. She got almost everything that woman wanted handed to her on a platter per se. And I think she's going to be surprised it's not going to happen here. So
Yeah.
we shall see.
I mean, that's to be expected. I've been in some trial, some death penalty cases recently.
Mhm.
And I mean, the judge is not as lackadaisious as Judge was. Not any that I've seen. I mean, it's a serious matter. You're playing with somebody's life here. It's not, well, I'm gonna lean back and oogle at the camera and act like I'm about to pass out. You know what I mean? Like
And there was a couple times that I could have swore there was some flirting going on. I'll be honest with you, no lie.
Yes.
Just saying. I'm telling you, I saw it a couple times. There was some Judge always had some kind of a shitty grin on his face too, and it's like, what are you doing?
Like he was Googling that, Ann Taylor.
Yeah. I'm sorry, and I know this guy's about ready to retire. Okay, that's great. Don't go out like don't go out like a lamb, bro. Go out like a lion. That's all I'm saying.
Right.
What
are you doing after the hearing, Ann? Can I buy you some coffee?
I mean, how many times has that happened? I wonder. I'm not trying to downgrade her or be disrespectful to him, but you gotta wonder. That's all I'm saying.
Right.
Truly.
Wonder where his hands were.
Yeah.
Under his robe.
Yeah, you gotta wonder. See, Jeff, you're not the only one to say that. Lots of people have said that to me or said it in conversation. I always wondered if Ann and the judge dated at one point in the past. I can't say that I'm not doubtful, okay? Or that I am doubtful. So I don't know. Let's move on a little bit more with this. We haven't gotten too far into this. There's a lot to say about this, so let's see what else she's got to say.
Firing squad ended up on the books because of the difficulty obtaining the drugs to kill somebody. That's why the firing squad came back. The history of the firing squad, which is really well written by Mr. Logston in our briefing, is that it sat on Idaho's books for years. And in 2009, it came off in light of the Bays decision. When you think about it coming off in light of the Bays decision, and you look at what's happened since the Bays decision, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later today when we're talking about evolving standards of decency, we'll talk about how things have changed in this country since then. But for these purposes, when you look at that and you realize Idaho brings it back in 2023, they bring it back because it's not reliable to believe they're always going to be able to get the chemicals to execute somebody. And that's the real problem here. The firing squad hasn't been funded well enough to be built.
I think they're building it right now, as I recall from the media, at least, that the construction's actually underway. But I may be wrong about that.
Well, I haven't talked to the director of the Department of Corrections, and that's probably who I would take my word from if that. They bring it.
Now watch this guy back here. When she makes that statement, watch what this guy does back here.
Back because it's not reliable to believe they're always going to be able to get the chemicals to execute somebody. And that's the real problem here. The firing squad hasn't been funded well enough to be built.
I think they're building it right now, as I recall from the media, at least, that the construction's actually underway. But I may be wrong about that.
Well, I haven't talked to the director of the Department of Corrections, and that's probably.
To me, it looked a little bit like this guy's anxious to jump up and say something at this point. I'm telling you, that's just me, and he's shutting this down right away. That's something else I kind of got to respect. When she says something, he shuts it down quick. If it's wrong, she's right there with it. I love that.
probably who I would take my word from if that's actually happening right now. I think there's some additional problems with the firing squad, though. I think there's some problems with the way our statute lays it out, too. If you read our statute, and the court just summarized it, it's lethal injection unless it's not available, and then it's going.
Matahari, have a great night, hun. Thank you so much for joining us again. Please get some sleep. You are so very much appreciated. Again, thank you.
Good night, Matahari.
So why couldn't they just carry that out at a firing range? I mean, I'm not trying to be callous here, but how much is really needed to build something where you're gonna, take care of that? If you're worried about people viewing it, have it indoors somewhere in the shooting range. I mean,
No, it's a good point. It is. And Sherry Wisdom Speaks stated this early on multiple times. And she's right. She worked in the court systems for years. I'm going to say 90 out of 100% of sorry, everybody. Their arguments today were arguments for the appellate court. Okay. They were for like appeals courts or they just didn't fit with this at all. And that was what had me going, what are you doing? And she was absolutely right. Sherry was 100% on point with that, in my opinion. So just wanted to put that out there too.
To be the firing squad. But the way that's written is that it's firing squad unless the director of the Department of Corrections says I have the chemicals and we can do lethal injection. And I think there's 5 days that exist for the director of the Department of Corrections to say, no, we have the drugs, we can do lethal injection now. That is problematic. There's not a choice or an election, and other states have an election for the condemned person to choose from, but Idaho's not allowing that. Additionally, the information that I think is really important to the court is to understand things and advances that have happened in understanding conscious pain and suffering. If Dr. Wolf had been allowed to testify, she would tell you that she relies on studies from 2010, a working group from 2010, and a book that was published later than that even. And that's post the Bayes decision. And that talks about understanding what a person is conscious and aware of when they face the firing squad. That's information that's important for the court when considering whether or not to strike the death penalty, because Idaho's means of execution really doesn't exist. Thank you.
Can I ask you, even if your motion were right, and even accepting as true that the current means of execution are either unavailable or would violate the 8th Amendment as cruel and unusual, how do you get around Buckwell? You've not provided a alternate means of execution.
Well,
and I know, and I understand from your perspective, it's not something defense counsel wants to do.
She was not ready for that at all. At all.
Where's her fire back response?
She locked up like boom right now.
She always get that look on her face when she's uncertain.
Yeah, that that silence was like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
Now what? You know what I mean? So yeah. What's the matter, Pebbles? What'd she say? Yeah, I was like, you can't just call a mod a hoe. And in that mod's chat, laugh out loud, two told me that was you. That was you because I asked him what had happened. I was giving Rolo her. Oh, you're talking about something. I'm like, what the hell? I thought something happened here. I'm sorry. Sorry, Pebbles. I didn't mean to interfere. My apologies. Wait, in Dinky's chat right now. What happened? I'm lost. Okay. Either way. Yeah, that was their very long hesitation. And that told me, like, she right then and there, she went, oh shit. You know what I mean? Like, what am I supposed to say to this? That's
she
not
went
good.
and sat down after that, not long after.
There was no preparedness for that whatsoever. And that was a snappy comeback on his part, too, because he's right. If you don't think these are good decisions, what should we do? Silence, you know?
Is to say, no, do it this way. Execute my client this way. But Buckwell provides that if you're going to challenge the means of execution, you have to, as a condition proceeding, provide a available an alternate, I should say, means of execution.
I would say, to your honor, that we're not at the place where we would have to make that decision yet.
That speak to the justiciability of the issue overall.
I don't think it does. And I think that the separation and the difference is that we are in a place where we're preparing this case to go to trial. We represent Mr. Kohberger, who sits there, an innocent man right now, but we're preparing this case as a capital case with all of the things that that involves, all of the requirements that are upon counsel that take a lot of time, a lot of work, and a lot of money to do this. And so I think when we're looking at the constitutionality of the execution, I think that's different than if there was a conviction and if there was a death sentence and if the post-conviction proceeding and the appeals were unsuccessful for Mr. Kohberger.
Doesn't that speak to your motion in the sense that you're saying take the death penalty off the table, don't let the state put on that evidence because the current methods, in your view, are either unavailable or unconstitutional. But the reality is if he is convicted, we know it's going to be a decade plus before that sentence would be carried out. And who knows what the methods may be then. And, I think that's part of why you're saying you shouldn't have to comply with Buckwell. But it seems to me that that same rationale then applies to why I should even consider this motion. Why wouldn't we wait until that time frame to see what the current methods are? Who knows what technologically is going to be available at that time?
Exactly.
I definitely hear what the court's saying. I would come back to saying that we're not in the place where he's challenging the methods that's about to be employed. We are decades away from that, if that were to even happen. But what I'm saying is, I don't believe that our Constitution allows for us to move forward and make him sit on death row for years and years and years when the way Idaho's doing it right now isn't really working. It's not a realistic option. I think to have him sit on death row and say, Idaho's going to figure out how to kill you at some point in the future in a way that isn't cruel and unusual and in violation of your rights, I just don't think that the constitutional protections allow that to happen.
Hey, Dago, I got two things really quick.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
The first thing is they were worrying about jury tampering, right? And him getting a fair trial and all this stuff. What's with her constantly saying he sits there an innocent man? That's subliminally putting that out there to anybody that's watching this. So they're thinking, well, Anne's saying he's innocent, so he must be innocent. She must know something we don't know. And the second thing is, if her client's going to spend decades waiting to be killed, what is she telling us there? I mean, it just doesn't make sense to me. If you're going to have this argument, it should be in the penalty phase, not during right now. And
I agree. Yes, sir. I agreed with you on that. Doodle did. We were talking about that. Like, this is not relevant right now. Okay. Here's the thing. My biggest thing on this. Okay. If he does get the death penalty, whether he knows how it's going to happen or not, he's still going to sit on death row for 20 or 30 years waiting for that to happen. I don't care if it's by firing squad or lethal injection, electric chair, or if by giving him a laxative that he shits himself to death. I don't care what it is, okay? What I'm saying is that either way, he's still going to sit there and wait for that to happen. The same amount of time. The only difference is he's not going to know whether it's going to be this or this. What bearing does that have on anything? You're still going to lose your life. At some point in 10, 20, 30, 40 years, you're going to go and your life is going to end. And at that point, what does it matter? And like
And
I
to be
said,
fair, if he is found guilty after all the appeals, the victims weren't given that opportunity. They didn't know their lives were going to be over on November 13th.
no, they didn't.
If he is the man, then, you know, he took that upon himself. So you do the crime, you do the time.
Thank you. And they didn't get to choose whether they were shot or stabbed or electrocuted or any of that. They didn't have that choice.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that's what I'm saying. Like, this is so irrelevant to me. I know it's an important part of the trial. Don't get me wrong. I struggled with the argument because of this feeling. Like I said earlier, this isn't going to happen for decades, like they said. Okay. I'll give it 20 years. I'll go even in the middle. It could be more than that or a little less than that. Who knows? But what happens if in 20 years, you guys, by, you know, whatever it is, 2044, okay? What if they abolish the death penalty in Idaho for some reason? What if they come up with some kind of a new, more humane way to do it or less humane way to do it or something else? What happens if all that stuff changes in the next 20 years? That's when that becomes relevant to me, okay?
Right.
Not right now before he's even started his trial. That's what I don't understand. That's what I'm struggling with this whole thing. You know what I mean? And that's why this bothered me so bad. Because like you just said, and like we said earlier, the victims got to have no choice in how they died, nor whether or not they lived or died. And their families didn't get to have those options either. I'm sorry, but I can't feel bad for him sitting and waiting and not knowing which way it's going to be. I just don't. If this man did it, that's not his right anymore. And I don't mean to yell if I'm raising my voice. I'm not trying to. I'm just saying. The argument, this was weak, guys. At the most, this was very weak. Okay, and this is how she starts with. I was highly disappointed with this, truly. Heather says, I think she failed on making the point that the speedy trial was waived in order for him to have more effective counsel. Wholeheartedly, Heather, completely failed. That was the worst. Yes, I agree. So, and I know, Pebbles, it's a formality. It's absolutely protocol. I understand. I do completely. I get it. It's just,
I get that too. I'm not talking about, you know, that he's not presumed innocent. I'm saying just say that the man is innocent. She didn't say presumed. You know, there's a difference in a court of law versus the court of opinion. I wasn't trying to be disrespectful in any way whatsoever.
oh no, I understand.
Yeah.
I got you. I know what you were meaning by it. Sometimes the way we say things doesn't sound right to other people. It's understandable. The question to ask a death penalty certified jury or a lot different than a regular. Oh yeah. That's true. If we haven't determined that yet. I understand what you mean. Woke up in 84. Good to see you. Welcome back. Great to have you tonight. I just struggle with plus choosing a DP cert jury is a lot more struggle, especially when the bias is so extreme. It's a good point too, Heather. I agree. I'm just struggling with her argument on this. That's all truly that bothers me totally. Because again, the relevancy as compared to 2044 or even 10 years out before that. Let's give it that. You know, let's say he's found guilty in 10 years of the crimes and he gets the death penalty. Maybe look into that 10 years before, you know, it's going to happen or something, or when you're in appeals or something like that. I don't know. I don't truly know how that would all work, but I was bothered by this in a lot of ways. So that's all. I get it, Walt. I respect you. I respect it. Your feelings, all of you guys. I truly do. I respect all these opinions and all this input too, you guys. It's amazing. I appreciate you guys so much for this.
Exactly.
This is exactly what I wanted to do tonight too. So it's great in my opinion. So you still here, Mom? I didn't put you out yet.
Nope, I'm here.
Okay, just making sure you're not snoozing yet.
I don't snooze that easy. I don't think I've ever fell asleep on panel. I come
Once.
damn close to it one night.
I
Like,
thought you
was
did once.
dozing.
I thought you, Kimber, 3 of you guys fell out on me, I thought, one night. Or you were close. You stayed awake, but the others fell
No,
asleep.
I would never do that because y'all think the Kimberfoot snores. Y'all ain't heard nothing yet. I'm from a lumberjack family.
Right. And Heather said, yes, she dropped the ball. Yeah. And I knew that the Ballo thing was going to get brought up when it did, too. I knew it was coming. I knew it was coming because of how it went down. And then, yeah, when she did pull it up, she didn't explain it well. I agree with that, too, Heather. We're getting to that here at some point. If I could
I
shut
don't
up and
remember
let-
what we were covering that night, but I was half a. So what the hell were we covering? Was it a manhunt?
I think it was the manhunt because I was dozing myself on and off a little bit.
I think it was the manhunt, and I was trying to hold out as long as I could.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
We were on for a long time for that, too. That's probably why. So, absolutely.
I think that
So you're saying the anxiety of not knowing is the constitutional violation?
I say that, and I believe that the Troop versus Doles was cited in the brief, and the comparison there is what I'm saying the Constitution doesn't allow. It is anxiety, it is fear, it is the not knowing.
Welcome, Miss Debbie.
To be fair, the Idaho Supreme Court just ruled that anxiety and fear in the Creech case was not sufficient to preclude his execution just this week.
I read that opinion, and I read that, I guess, more particular to the botched execution attempt versus sitting there for decades and not knowing how and if it would happen.
No, but it was anxiety that was the underpinning.
And I don't mean to disrespect.
See, once again, I can't go with that, guys. Like, if you're found guilty, you get the death penalty. You're sitting on death row for years. The anxiety is going to be there regardless, knowing that you're losing your life. So just because you don't know which way it's going to happen, that's going to cause you extreme anxiety. And I can't say that I can't worry about that. I'm not a heartless person. You guys know me, okay? I'm a very caring and compassionate person. My compassion level stops at a certain point, though. When it comes to something like this, I can't worry about how he feels about how he's going to die.
I mean, are you going to go back and overturn all the death penalty cases because they might be suffering from anxiety?
You
How
can't.
How about didn't you say there was 15 currently or 13 currently in Idaho that are awaiting death?
I think 15. Yeah. I think.
Are any of them feeling anxiety? Are they going to use that as a defense to get out of facing death?
Well, that's what I think he referred to that. Truly.
Yeah.
Truly. Yes, absolutely. And yes, Pebbles, I did knock out on you guys once. Molly caught me and captured it. I completely went sideways on it too. It was kind of funny. Yeah, and that's a good point, 12 gauge. Like, you can't go back to all these other cases now. If you do it with this one, in a sense, you'd have to do it with a lot now. You know what I mean? That's just what's good for the goose is good for the gander. It's the same thing. Like, if you're bringing suckers to the class, you better bring them for everybody, not just yourself. So,
yeah,
I'm just saying. It was boring. I'll say that much. We made it fun in here, but yeah, that was a classic moment for sure.
dang, I would have liked to seen that.
What are you saying, Jeff? Hold on. You didn't mean to type that. I didn't see it, but that's okay. We'll go forward. I got you. No big deal.
What Mr. Creech felt or went through. But you're talking about realistically from February 29th, if this was the year, until now, and what you're talking about for Mr. Kohberger and what would happen if he were convicted and if he were sentenced to death would be decades. the court just acknowledged that it's decades to sit.
Well, I said
And no
a
disrespect to
decade,
the anxiety Mr. Creech felt. I think that must have been horrible for him. But to sit for decades and wonder is a lot longer. And so I understand what the Supreme Court said. I did read that too. But I think it's different when you're just starting out here in this circumstance.
Thank you.
Yeah, Creature's anxiety is a way different situation. You know, knowing that you were about to die and it didn't work, and you don't know what's coming next. That's a whole different level of anxiety, as far as I'm concerned. It has nothing to do with this. It's nothing like this, in my opinion. Just saying, that should have never been brought into this. At least not that part of it. Right. The death warrant came and went. That's what I'm saying. Exactly. I understand it can definitely cause PTSD and stuff like that. That's nothing like this here. These are two separate things, in my opinion. That should have never been used to, equivalate this at all. So trying to figure out Ann's strategy on all the DP stuff. That's weird, Jeff. It's very strange. It's nothing what I expected for her to do. I'll just say that much. Truly, I will say that much.
Aye.
Your Honor, I'll try and keep this brief. I don't want to repeat much what's in my brief, and I think a lot has already been discussed today, but I want to start by pointing out, one of the things that Ms. Taylor just said was, looking forward, we don't have the answers to that yet. Well, that's the whole point, is this just isn't right. We don't know what's going to be available decades from now, and it probably will be decades, plural. If you look at, Idaho's track record, Mr. Creech, Mr. Pizzuto, they were convicted back in the 80s.
Take as true, for the purposes of my question, that the state doesn't have a method. Should defendants be tried for and potentially sentenced to death when the state has no method of execution currently?
Yes, Your Honor, I don't see a problem with that, because deciding the method of execution is not deciding the sentence. The sentence is death. The method of execution is just how that's brought about. And so even the United States Supreme Court has recognized that someone who was convicted and sentenced to death, in that case, I believe was hanging. And then after he was sentenced to death, the state passed a law, made it electrocution. And the U.S. Supreme Court said there's no ex post facto problem with that, because you're not changing the penalty.
That's what my argument is with this whole thing. You're still getting the death penalty. You're still going to die. It doesn't matter how you die. It's still going to happen. Okay. Let me go. Like, this drives me nuts. Let's go into this real fast here. Say Brian's found guilty. He gets the death penalty, and it's the lethal injection. We'll say that. And then when it finally comes into play 30 years later, all the appeals are spent, everything's said and done, so on and so forth, whatever. Again, like I said earlier, what if they come to the point where they abolish the death penalty, or they come up with a pill that you take and you're done, or they change it up to make you drink antifreeze, or I know that sounds dumb, but I'm just saying, whatever methods that there are, the end result is still the same. Your life is done. You're gone. It's over. So I don't understand why there's even an argument about that scenario. The sentence doesn't change. You're still going to die. That's what my biggest issue with this. How is this even an argument?
I would be all for taking a pill. If that was going to be the end, let me just swallow that pill and go to sleep.
They could do that. They definitely could do something like that. You know what I mean?
You know what I mean? It's like, whatever.
That's definitely something they could do. Whether humane, I don't know, but it's something could be done.
Is any of this stuff humane if we're looking at 2024 versus, I don't know, the turn of the century? I mean, like you were saying, they used to pull people apart by horses. I mean, everything at one point was was realistic to the means. You know, it was a mean to an end. I mean, at this point, this is the best we have, and nobody's been able to bring up a different scenario up to this point. Doesn't mean it needs to be abolished. It's almost like tearing down the statues, but wanting to go back and present history. It doesn't work both ways. You know, you're either for it or you're against it, in my opinion.
Right. I agree 100%. Yes, sir. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
there's
I'm gonna hop down from here, Dago. Thank you and Mom for having me up here, and thank you, chat, for listening to my long-windedness. I'm gonna plug my channel really quick, Dago. If any of you have not been over to 12 Gauge Investigative, y'all come over and hang out with me as well. It's kind of the same concept, true crime, great community. Dago's awesome. Thank you so much. I'm out.
Thank you, bro. Appreciate your input as always, and you have a great night, sir.
Bah.
Take care, brother. Yeah, I agree. It totally. You know, it's all the same thing. It's either you're for it, like you said, or you're against it. In the end of this argument is void as far as I'm concerned. In the end of this, you're still dead. You're still gonna die. Whether it's firing squad, lethal injection, the electric chair, the gas chamber, you're still gonna lose your life, and you know that. You're gonna be told that. That's a fact. So the anxiety about how it's gonna happen, I don't see how that is even remotely an issue. Sorry, guys. Hell, that could be something at that point, Jeff. Death penalty by fentanyl overdose. Who knows? We don't know how. You know how bad things change over periods of time in this world. You'll never know. All right, moving on. Let's listen to some more.
Penalty is death. And so even if you assume that Idaho cannot do lethal injection, and even if you assume that the firing squad is unconstitutional, that's not to say that decades from now, there is not going to be a method by which the state could put him to death. And then, of course, I was accepting the hypothetical as proposed, but we would strongly push back on this idea that Idaho doesn't have a method of execution. There was a scheduled execution to take place on November 13th, just days from now, that was only stopped because the federal district court entered a stay so that it had time to consider some additional claims. But in that case, Director T-Walt put in an affidavit that said, we have the chemicals, we can do this. We've modified the procedure to address the individualized problem that came up with Mr. Creech before, and so we can execute Mr. Creech. So there really is just no evidence whatsoever to suggest that Idaho can't do this, and certainly not that it can't do this decades from now. And again, that gets back to the ripeness issue. Is it may be lethal injection, it may not, it may be some other method, but we just don't know enough now, frankly, to spend the time and the effort debating what we don't know in the future. That's the entire reason the ripeness doctrine exists. I also want to speak just briefly on the Bucklew point that the court brought up. What I'm hearing from the defense is they just have this kind of like vague Eighth Amendment assertion of maybe it's kind of the anxiety, but kind of not knowing how you're going to be executed. Well, that's not how the law works. There's an established framework of how you can make an Eighth Amendment method of execution claim. And Bucklew, the court specifically said, I'm quoting here, identifying an available alternative is a requirement of all, and all is emphasized in the decision, all Eighth Amendment methods of execution claims. You can't get around that by just saying, well, but I'm making a slightly different kind of claim. It's not a method of execution claim, it's a means of execution claim. That just doesn't work. That's not how the law operates. And so they haven't even suggested, even today, an argument what a proper alternative would be, which also gets back to the ripeness issue, which is we don't know decades from now what an alternative might be. Maybe they'll have a better argument decades from now on the method of execution, because maybe there will be a better method. And that gets to the final point I want to bring up, which is the remedy here. They're asking that the death penalty be struck because these methods are unconstitutional, but that's not how it works. If you show that one method is unconstitutional, part of the reason you have to present a viable, readily implemented alternative is so that the state can then use that method for the execution. You don't get to, at the beginning, short circuit the whole thing and say death is off the table because the current method is unconstitutional. As I said before, the method could change. And so If they came in and they had evidence and they could show that there was another method that's not lethal injection, that's not firing squad, that severely or significantly reduces the pain, and it's readily implemented, the answer isn't to strike it, the death penalty completely. It's to say, okay, you can move forward with the trial. We can see if he's sentenced to death, but you can't use those two methods to do it. If the state wants to pass a law and do the other method that he's proposed, then you can do it that way. So for all those reasons, Your Honor, unless there's any further questions, we'd ask that the court deny the motion.
Thank you. Any rebuttal?
Just briefly, Your Honor. The distinction is not us being on death row with a death warrant that we're talking about. That's a different kind of conversation. We're well before looking at the overall picture and saying the Constitution protects somebody from sitting in prison when there's not a real means to execute.
Do you
I
have
understand.
any case that says that?
I'm making an analogy with the troop versus duels and the denaturalization with the dehumanization that happens if somebody sits on death row when there's not a realistic way to execute. I understand that lethal injection has not been overruled. I understand that. But when we're talking about the recent history of what's happened in Idaho, there are problems, and there are real problems. We talked about Pizzuto, we talked about Creech, we talked about two pieces of legislation to try to make this work, and it just doesn't work. So we're in a position where I'm not with a client that has a death warrant, and we're talking about whatever they'll probably talk about with Creech, with how they're going to do injection. We're not talking about the marksman involved in a firing squad. We're talking about way back here when we're sitting with constitutional protections, and Idaho's got all these problems with executing somebody. And how is that right, fair, any protection under the Constitution for somebody to have to sit there and just wait for Idaho to figure it out? That's the difference in our argument. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, court will take that issue under advisement and issue a written opinion with respect to its ruling. Next, I want to take up the objection to Professor Kohberger's testimony.
Your Honor, as the state pointed out in its written objection, Professor Cover's testimony is
Is it
largely,
Cover or Kohberger?
I believe, I'll defer to defense counsel. Is it? It's Cover.
Cover, thank you.
Thank you, counsel. Professor Cover's testimony in this case would largely center around a legal analysis that she conducted over several other murder cases throughout Idaho. Now, the first reason that this isn't appropriate is because legal conclusions are just not the appropriate subject of expert testimony. The state cited to Ybarra in its objection, and in Ybarra, the Idaho Supreme Court held that legal conclusions by an expert were not proper for consideration before the court. Now, that expert was allowed to testify as to factual conclusions, but the court struck legal conclusions from that expert's declaration. Additionally, as the state also pointed out in its written objection, the Idaho Supreme Court straight up rejected a similar attempt to do an analysis over first-degree murder cases in an attempt to argue that Idaho's statutory scheme doesn't accomplish narrowing. And so I think the court can look to the Hairston case where it was an almost identical argument, and the court found that it simply wasn't relevant, and also preclude Professor Cover from testifying on that basis as well. When the state received the PowerPoint that Professor Cover would be utilizing, many of these slides are simply excerpts from statutes. The PowerPoint itself is titled An Empirical and Constitutional Analysis, and that's largely what her testimony would be, which is a constitutional analysis leading to her conclusion that Idaho's statutory scheme just doesn't accomplish narrowing. This is a legal argument, and the state would ask the court to preclude her from testifying on that basis. Thank you, Your Honor.
Assa?
Good morning, Your Honor.
Oh, here we go.
The first argument that I'd like to address relates to Hidalgo. And in the Hidalgo case, the state of Arizona had actually conceded that there were statutory problems. And when the Supreme Court took that into consideration, the reason that they did not issue a cert was that they wanted a robust discussion about other data analysis and have that come under the scrutiny of cross-examination. And so that's my first point to you today, is that the United States Supreme Court wants what we're wanting to accomplish here today with Professor Cover. They want that discussion to occur so that the data is and studies are scrutinized and discussed, and a trial court like you has the ability to make a full assessment. Reading a paper doesn't allow you to do that the way that the expert who did the study can explain it. The other point that I want to make is that as it relates to the Hairston case, I pulled the underlying briefing in that. So the underlying briefing in Hairston was a direct appeal and a post-conviction appeal, and they were consolidated. And the study that Dr. Jensen did was nowhere even close to what the study that Dr. Cover did.
But the court's thrust was that the legal analysis is not whether the statutory aggregators cumulatively narrow the class of first-degree murders eligible for the death penalty. That's not a relevant legal analysis. The legal analysis is whether an individual aggravator does so, that it excludes rationally first-degree from among first-degree murders within that particular aggravator. And as I understand Hairston, it's just not a relevant issue. It's not a legally
Welcome, Miss Cheryl.
it's not an issue that upon which the question turns.
Well, Hairston was decided
That I'm a trial court and not the Supreme Court.
and I'm sorry I interrupted you.
No, that's
Hairston
okay.
was decided in 1999, which was a long time before Hidalgo was decided. And so the United States Supreme Court has absolutely made the issue ripe and said, we want to hear what the specific data is, and we extend the invitation for that to be done. The study in Hairston was framed as, did Idaho's method of compelling financially burdened counties to bear the cost of litigation in capital cases result in arbitrary and
That was
capricious
the claim of
application?
geographic discrimination.
Pardon?
Wasn't that the claim of geographic discrimination?
It was based on money and whether or not an urban
That's
versus a
different from
non-urban.
the issue of what the relevant legal framework is with respect to whether or not the aggravators are overbroad or over-inclusive.
I
as a
agree.
whole.
I agree. But before we get to even there, Judge, which would come under our motions to strike, the heinous, atrocious, and cruel, and utter disregard, and propensity, the other motions that we have before you, we first have to focus on the eligibility and looking at eligibility of the death penalty in the state of Idaho, which is a legislative function that looks at the statute and then the aggravators as a method of narrowing, and whether or not that results in arbitrary and capricious application for purposes of the Eighth Amendment. And that's what Professor Cover's study addresses.
Correct. It doesn't address whether an individual aggravator is itself overly inclusive. It doesn't do it based on, in fact, she generalizes the aggravators as quote unquote the fuzzy ones, I think is what she called it. And then the, I can't remember what the name, the clear ones were.
Right. But it is her study is a good foundation.
Thank you so much, Leslie. I can't see who exactly got it right now, but thank you so
Mama
much. for your-
Cannoli.
Awesome. Awesome. Congrats, Mama Cannoli. God, I want cannolis now. Doodle was talking about making them earlier. Now that name's in here, I wish to God. But congrats, Mama Cannoli. Welcome to the sauce. I appreciate you so much. And again, Leslie, thank you so much for donating that membership. That's awesome of you. I love that this judge has knowledge of the. Oh, yeah. We talked about that earlier, Jeff. He's on point with everything he knows, too. He's quick, too. That's crazy. He didn't have to stop and think about it and look into it like Judge did. It's there in his mind, and that's what he needs. So that's awesome. Always be asking Ian what to do. Yeah, very, very good points. Very good points. It's a sign. What's up, Callie? Good to see you.
And when you're get into the next level of looking at those aggravators and the definition of fuzzy and what that really means in terms of the analysis to strike those individually. So we have to begin with looking at whether or not we should even be getting there in the selection process.
Right. But I guess my concern is that the Supreme Court, the outer Supreme Court, has said that That's not the issue. When we look at whether the aggravators are unconstitutional as being not sufficiently narrowing of the class of persons or crimes available for the death penalty, the Supreme Court specifically rejected a approach that is based on the cumulative effect of the aggravators together. It said you have to look at each individual aggravator and ask with respect to that aggravator, does it exclude sufficiently? Am I wrong about that?
I don't disagree with what your statement is. I'm saying that we've got to start before that with the analysis of who is eligible
Right, but that's
to
the
be
point.
charged with the death penalty.
That's-
But it begins, Judge, with the definition of first-degree murder. You start with the definition, which is very broad, of first-degree murder,
Which is why the aggravators are required.
right? And then you look at what happens within those aggravators. And we are arguing about the individual nature of those aggravators in other motions. So, these are different arguments.
But you, in those other motions, didn't rely upon Dr. Kohberger's article.
No, that's true, but it still comes to the issue. You still have to look at the issue of eligibility before you get there.
But the aggravator is the eligibility.
It's part of the analysis.
I mean,
of the
everyone agrees the
eligibility.
statute itself as to first-degree murders that are eligible is, without more, unconstitutionally vague. That's why the court has, U.S. Supreme Court then later approved statutory aggravators, including with judicial gloss, right? So then the question, the court has said, the Supreme Court of Idaho has said, and the Supreme Court of Arizona has said, is, and other courts, not whether, when you look at all the aggravators together, cumulatively, do those sufficiently narrow? The question is, when you look at an individual aggravator, does it exclude first-degree murders from it? Does it narrow first-degree murders? And you look at those each individually and not cumulatively. My understanding is that Professor Kohberger's analysis is that taken as a whole, these don't accomplish that. Is that accurate?
I would yield to her to testify to that, Judge.
Well, I've read our law review article, and that's what she
That's the
says.
purpose of having her testify. I think that it comes in segments, and you have to begin with the definition, and you have to get to the aggravators, and then you have to look at what is the quantity of cases in Idaho that fall within both of those, pair it against what the result is for it being arbitrary and capricious. And when you're talking about our court, the Hidalgo case is from the United States Supreme Court, post-states what our court said in Hearng.
The other concern I have,
Welcome,
I'll
Mittens.
save that. I'm just now thinking about whether I need Dr. Kohberger. Why can't I rely on her law review article as a proffer of what her testimony would be?
Well, Judge, you are the trier of fact here, and it's important that you listen to.
I agree,
to
Heather.
make a reasoned decision, hear testimony, and hear that.
Definitely agree, Heather. Thank you so much, Leslie and Billy, for the super chat. That's so very awesome. One more faithful. Always, Leslie. Always, always. Thank you so much.
Testimony be confronted and cross-examined. And that's what the United States Supreme Court said. I mean, if the state were to stand up here right now and say, hey, we concede, the statute's overbroad, the aggravators 11, everybody fits. What the United States Supreme Court has said is, we appreciate that concession, Arizona. It may genuinely exist, but we are a justice system where we want to hear that data talked about. We want to hear those issues confronted. We want to hear that debated. And so as a trial judge in this case, this is the appropriate time for you to hear that so that you can make a reasoned decision, not just based on her paper, but based on her explanation. One of the arguments that the state has made is that, we don't know what she's gathered, what her methods are. Well, she'll be able to testify to that, to explain that to the court, what her approach was. And it was different than what happened in Hearng years ago. And so for that reason, this court should hear that so that you can make a reasoned decision.
Your Honor, I'd like to address the foundation issue because even if this court were to use the denial of cert in the Hidalgo case as a basis to delve into this issue at this time.
Good point, Jeff.
Professor Cover's data does not provide adequate foundation to be reliable enough for the court to do that. And what I mean by that is that if you look at the Excel spreadsheet that was provided as an exhibit, I would direct the court's attention to just 4 examples. Line 22, the Nuxall case, death notice was not filed in that case. And Professor Cover did a review of the documents that were available to her and labeled that case as clear hack. Now, the significance to her designation as clear hack is that elsewhere, when she designates cases as hack or utter disregard or propensity, which she describes as fuzzy aggravators, she doesn't designate everyone as a clear aggravator. She only designates this one in particular and potentially.
Welcome, Phil. I was wondering where you were, especially for this tonight. I thought you'd be here for sure. Oh, you're okay, Jeff. Don't worry about that, bud. Welcome, Mr. and Mrs. Phil. You never know who you are. Wonderful to have you here again, like I said, tonight. And it's great to see you again, especially for this conversation. So
others as clear, which then calls into question, well, are the others not clear? And potentially did the prosecutors who were determining whether or not to file death perhaps have more information available to them that enabled them to determine that, in fact, that those aggravators did not apply. The next I would direct the court's attention to would be the Huntsman case, line 33 in that spreadsheet. That case was labeled utter disregard / propensity ? Again, if Professor Cover can't determine for sure whether or not these labels apply and has to place a question mark in there, and she's relying on the court record, not necessarily the entire body of evidence that the state would have had before it when it determined whether or not to file that notice. Again, she isn't even sure herself, at least according to the spreadsheet, if those designations apply. Carlos Alonso Sandoval.
yeah, we said that in the beginning, Jeff. I can agree with you. I'm truly believing that they do regret it completely at this point.
Line 44, her notes indicate possible hack. No death notice was filed. And according to that spreadsheet, it would have been included in her study. Yet she writes possible hack. And there was no clear aggravator in that case, I believe, Your Honor, which means that, again, we're including this case based on the fact that she's designating that it might apply, possible hack. Finally, I would point the court's attention to line 52, Angela Cervantes. The state did not file a notice of death in that case. Now, there was a clear aggravator, according to her, for kidnapping. But again, when she lists whether or not a fuzzy aggravator applies, she writes utter disregard with a question mark. Again, Dr. Cover is relying, according to her article, on documents she was able to obtain from transcripts from the state appellate public defender's office. She did not indicate in her article that she had, I don't think she even argues that she had the same body of evidence that the prosecutor would have had in each of those cases, making those determinations. So what's essentially happening, and this kind of brings us full circle to the legal analysis issue with all of this, is that she's reviewing court records, making a legal determination that's different than the prosecutor who made that determination whether or not to file a notice of death, intent to seek the death penalty. This is not a reliable body of evidence upon which the court could even make that determination, if the court even wants to consider it as evidence, which in the state's position, it's really just a legal analysis where Professor Cover is just reaching a different legal conclusion based on court records and providing a statutory analysis. And so the state would just argue that her article is a sufficient proffer. We would ask the court to grant the state's motion and to disallow her from testifying today. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Rebuttal? Oh, actually, that was the rebuttal, wasn't it?
If you'd let me talk,
I will indulge you.
Thank you.
My schedule is already shot to hell, but we'll indulge you.
Judge, we will be able to get through in one day. I think that the argument that the state just made feeds my point, which is they're drawing conclusions off of the raw data without talking to the expert. When an expert provides their spreadsheets and has notes without asking Professor Cover what a question mark means, what the exact records were, why she used those records, why the conclusions she drew were drawn. First of all, you don't have the exhibit because it has not been admitted. It's been provided to them because they were raising issues about wanting to see the data. Or if she's allowed to testify, she can talk about that.
This is the data that she used with respect to her law review article.
Correct. To draw her conclusions and do her study. And so,
and that law review article was as of 2019.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. And so I think that the state just actually made the exact point that I'm trying to make to you. Thank you.
So since I have you, you brought up Hidalgo. and you talked about the Supreme Court doing this, my reading of Hidalgo is that cert was denied. A minority of justices issued their own statement in which they thought it would be important to gather additional information. The court itself did not. Am I correct about that?
Well, you're correct that cert was denied, but Hidalgo has been viewed across the United States as an invitation. It's not just Idaho that's done this, done a study. You know, other states have done the same at the invitation of the Supreme Court.
An invitation of 4 of 9 justices of the Supreme Court.
Correct. It's still an invitation, and it's been accepted as an invitation.
Thank you. So I don't find that the proffered testimony of Dr. Kohber will be relevant or helpful to the court to decide this issue. I think that I can rely upon her law review article and the data that I understand that has been provided today as a proffer of what that testimony would be. Of course, the constitutionality of Idaho's capital sentencing scheme is a question of law. Whether to allow expert testimony is committed to this court's discretion, specifically the well-known 4-part My Fun Life standard. Opinions as to the law are generally not admissible by experts. The court is the determiner of questions of law and not what somebody else's opinion of what the law is. Opinions of what the law is are received by the court through counsel, not through expert witnesses. And so generally I would not have.
I'm used to it, Pebbles. I don't sleep well. My years in the fire service, I was used to being up all day and all night. It never changed. So, and I enjoy hanging out with you guys quite a bit. So that's a big part of it. One of the big issues, more important issues to consider, Ann Taylor gets to it, is convening a death penalty jury is more difficult than a guilt innocence jury. Of course, death penalty juries are most likely to convict, so it's on or off. So if it's on or off, it matters. Yeah, no, I understand, Phil. Good point too. Very sure. Very, very much so. And yes. Believe it. Well, I drink coffee like water, so that helps too. But believe me, when I do finally pass out, I'm out. I think when he dismissed Massive, it was a false flag. Let's act like I don't like you. It could be. It could be, Heather. Could be.
Permitted expert conclusions about the law. And therefore her opinions are neither relevant nor helpful, and therefore not admissible. Importantly, of course, as we talked about, Idaho has opted to satisfy the constitutional narrowing requirements from the U.S. Supreme Court through the adoption of statutory aggravators rather than through narrow definitions of capital offenses. The relevant, as I understand from reading her article, Professor Kohber's analysis is offered to support the argument that collectively Idaho's statutory aggravators do not sufficiently narrow.
That's a good point, Heather. I never thought of that. I respect that a lot. It's a very good point, actually.
Narrow those first-degree murders, which would qualify for the death penalty. But that is not the question that the court must answer. The relevant question is whether a particular individual aggravator provides a principal basis for distinguishing between those who deserve the death penalty and those who do not. The Hairston case, I believe, makes that clear. The court is bound by binding precedent of the Idaho Supreme Court on this issue. And therefore, I don't feel the need to take Dr. Kohber's testimony. I think the issue is sufficiently preserved through her law review article and the data that was provided. Now, if I look at this when I write this issue up, I certainly can invite counsel and Dr. Kohber back at a later date to provide that information or to help clarify some of that information. So from that perspective, I don't think Dr. Kohber's testimony is needed this morning. Now, I'm not going to preclude the argument on the merits using Dr. Kohber's analysis, because certainly counsel has the right to make a record of their argument on that as well. And so I will hear argument on the merits of the motion to strike the aggravators writ whole. This is not the argument on the individual aggravators, but on the collective aggravators.
We are asking the court to strike the death penalty because in Idaho, there is no narrowing of eligibility, which results in arbitrary imposition of a death sentence. We are also asking the court to strike the death penalty as a violation of the Equal Protection Clause. We will argue narrowing first. When it comes to the determination of eligibility, it begins with the definition of first-degree murder. And when the definition of first-degree murder is looked at, then the next thing that happens is looking at statutory aggravators. And the reason that those two things exist in Idaho and those steps in analysis exist in the United States is because of the Furman case. It's important to distinguish between eligibility to be charged and selection, which is at a post-conviction phase of a case. And so our argument and our focus for this issue is on the eligibility phase. What
Your argument
defendants-
doesn't consider the weighing of mitigators against the aggravators is what you're saying, and the appellate review available. You're simply focusing on whether collectively the statutory aggravators narrow the class.
Let me answer the mitigation question first. Mitigation is in the selection
Right.
phase.
That's what I'm
So
saying.
I'm not arguing about that. I'm going to step and grab my water.
Sure.
I want to be clear about the argument and eligibility that I'm talking about the definition of first-degree murder and the aggravator statute, because our definition is so broad that there is no narrowing there. And so that is an important first step that the prosecutor in their discretion, they're looking at, and there's essentially no guidance with the first degree definition. And so you do get to the narrowing factors, which is the duty of the legislature that cannot be abrogated to any other branch to fix when there is no proper narrowing. Professor Cover concluded that when you analyze those things with the 195 cases that she reviewed and collected data on against the number of death verdicts, which is so low, that you end up with a statistic that is worse than the statistic that the Supreme Court struck down in Furman.
Well,
And-
so the Furman's an interesting decision, right? Because while I recognize two of the justices talked about those specific statistics, I don't know that those specific statistics are in fact a binding opinion of the court. There's much more in Furman apart from the statistics that two justices relied on.
And I don't disagree with that, but it's certainly guidance for the court. You know, when you're not hearing testimony from the expert to explain everything that was taken into consideration in the conclusions that she drew, then what I'm going to do is take it at the high level that Furman is the guidance of those statistics. Her statistics show that Idaho's were vastly worse. And so it's certainly something that the court needs to take into consideration in terms of whether or not there is the ability to narrow in the state of Idaho. The conclusion from the expert who did the study here is that there is no narrowing.
And my question was more a legal one, which is the analysis by Dr. Kohberger in her extensive law review article takes as its starting point that you have to have a statistic below that identified by the two justices in Furman.
Your Honor, I guess I just
I'm not real keyed in on this part of this with what she's talking about, so I can't give you guys a good synopsis of this part of it. Unfortunately, I'm trying to put it together right now again as we're speaking or listening to it, but I still can't quite put it together. I know they're using the Furman case, but I don't know.
disagree that that's where she draws a hard line there. I think that it's guidance.
Okay.
And there were other states that she looked at that she could certainly, if she testified, explain what was going on in all of the things that were going on in her analysis. But I don't know that my interpretation is that there's this hard and fast line, but certainly we have a line that the United States Supreme Court looked at, and Idaho's is worse. So the problem when you have no narrowing is that instead of it being a situation where the worst of the worst are being charged with the death penalty, everyone falls within that category. And that cannot be remedied by anyone else other than the legislature, because that is their duty. And if there's no narrowing, then and it's arbitrary, that's a basis for this court to strike the death penalty. There were, when Dr. Cover did her study, she looked at other states that did a better job of narrowing in statutory aggravating factors. And I want to give the court an example of what that looks like. In the state of Oregon, which actually is on pause with its death penalty right now, a narrowed statute there is the murder of 2 or more people or terrorism while in custody.
Welcome, Gary. Thank you for joining us. I appreciate you, brother. Great to have you here tonight.
And after a previous homicide conviction, premeditation and against a child under 14 years of age, or premeditation and against a police officer or other officer. So that's an example of how a legislature can certainly make an attempt at getting factors much more narrowed and tailored. Now, Oregon's hasn't been, as I understand it, has not been taken up on appeal, so it hasn't been analyzed at this level, and the death penalty is on pause there. But it is an example of a statute that can be narrowed. The other thing that I wanted to point out is that the state of California versus Lipa, and I hope I'm saying that name right, has a statute for aggravators that in and of itself carries a whole bunch of mitigating factors for the state to actually take into consideration. So the state doesn't wait until it's very clear that the state is looking at what only happens in Idaho at the selection phase and not the eligibility phase. The other point that I want to make about our motion on this is the issue of geography. And I want to point out that we are arguing geography in the context of equal protection. Which is a unique argument that has been made in Idaho and has not been addressed on appeal when it was being raised in Hairston over financial resources. And the point was geography. It was in the context of arbitrary and capricious and not in the context of equal
But as I
protection.
understand your analysis is that the there's a predilection for capital cases to come from geographic centers of large populations, correct?
Correct.
Client's case does not stem from one of those.
That's true, Judge, but this is not, we're not talking about the facts of our client's case right now. We are talking about Idaho's
Your claim
statutory
is
scheme.
On the whole, your claim is that it violates equal protection.
Correct. And not only on an Idaho level, but also on a national level, when you take into consideration how many states have stopped using the death penalty or paused using the death penalty. So it's geographical at a state level, and it's geographical at a national level.
Interesting. I think the last 3 or 4 death penalty cases have come from outside those geographic centers in Idaho.
In terms of the southeastern Idaho.
2 in southeast Idaho, and I recognize one was death penalty was taken off the table for reasons outside the control. Well, I suppose not really outside the control of the state, but because of the state's failure in discovery. This case, and then I believe there was another one up in the 2nd district relatively recently that then was resolved.
Yeah, and I can't dispute that. That still does not eliminate the fact that in Hairston, Dr. Jensen concluded that there was a geographical issue. And in Dr. Cover's study, she made observations about geography as well.
But even she's confessed she couldn't make any conclusions based on that.
And that was why I used the word observation. And had she testified, she would have explained her observations regarding that. But it is instructive to see that a study that was conducted in 1995 in Hairston has the same results in 2019, even if it's just an observation about geography. One of the things that the Supreme Court mentioned in its decision in Hairston is that they really wanted more information about the data that had been gathered and the reasons that there was a determination by Dr. Jensen regarding that and more analysis. But nonetheless, that was Dr. Jensen's conclusion and their Professor Cover's observations.
Came home from the hospital.
And for those reasons, we are asking that you find, based on Professor Cover's study, taking it at face value. With
Thanks,
its
Tech Dad.
conclusions
Good to see you
and
tonight,
providing
sir.
with the data that we will look at and redact
If I
names.
go there, in other words, if I accept that there's an actual valid analysis to be done here, would you agree that I need to look at the cases since 2019 as well?
I think, Judge, that the point of bringing in an expert today to talk about a study is that that's her expertise in gathering the information.
Sorry, guys, that was my fault. The background noise. My apologies.
And putting it into a compilation. For you to engage in that on an individual basis.
Well, I can't take her opinion because it's a legal conclusion. Looking at her data, which is 5 years old now, it seems to me that if I were to engage in that, I would have to look at the data as of today and not as of 2019.
Yeah, I guess I'm not willing to concede that. And if it was something that needed to be undertaken, I'd like to have the opportunity to have Professor Cover testify about
She's
her
got no
time
opinion
frame.
about that.
Pardon?
She's got no opinion ultimately about that. She has some data that she collected that she thought was interesting and might require some additional study. I guess the point is, if I were to engage in that, it seems to me relevant, at least as to the state claim claim that the state equal protection, not state equal protection clause, but the equal protection as applied within Idaho geographically, would need to look at that as of the time frame now.
Well, it could certainly be instructive, Judge, but if you're taking the data from Hairston, which was 1978 to 1995, and Professor's Covers from 2002 to 2019, the data, if it was analyzed, I'm quite certain would support both of their premises. I haven't analyzed it. We could have that study done, but I think that there's enough guidance with all of those years of data to be able to draw the conclusion that it's arbitrary and capricious today, because the statutory language is still, the definition is still the definition. The statutory aggravators are still the statutory aggravators.
I have a case that indicates that an equal protection analysis can be applied on its face as opposed to as applied, because my understanding is an equal protection clause has to be analyzed as applied.
Yeah, I'm not able to, I can't right in this moment give you that case. I'd be happy to.
Have a good night, Alicia. Thank you so much for the whole day. Appreciate you very much. Hope to see you tomorrow morning. Get a great night's sleep and have good dreams, dear. Good night. Oh yeah. She did great with that song. She did the song for the morning show too. She did amazing with them. I really appreciate her. She was in here. She can't sit still too long though, so I doubt she is now.
Look into that and submit it as a supplemental authority.
You would agree if it is as applied, that would put your client's claim, at least as it relates to within the state of Idaho, as not being problematic, given that he's from one of the smallest districts in the state.
Well, then I want to go back and talk to you, Judge, about the premise in Hairston, which was pre the Capital Defense Fund, which also has created, in time, another dynamic of whether or not someone's charged with the death penalty and those costs at the time that he was charged. I mean, now it's different. So yeah, I'm not going to concede that as applied, it just simply doesn't fit. I think that there are greater questions than that, but I don't have a case to point you to exactly. I don't think that has been, it hasn't been raised in Idaho. We're making the first equal protection. I mean, in other district court cases in North Idaho, Mr. Logston has raised
Nope,
this issue,
it's
so I'm gonna
not.
say
Rejected
you're
in
the
those- in
first,
all of those.
right? But it has made it to the Idaho Supreme Court, to the appellate courts.
I just don't see how, as applied, you've provided the court any information where I could conclude that because your client is from one of the geographic districts you claim is the, does not get its fair share of capital cases.
And we did not submit that argument in our brief.
Thank you. I think you've used your time.
Thank you, Judge. I'll try and keep this brief. I think there are.
I think it seemed quite obvious to me that he was pretty much irritated with her and was kind of bored by her, as most of us probably were. But I think he totally disregarded what she had to say there. Honestly, that's again my opinion. I could be wrong, but that's how I took that. Sorry, that the background noise was me. I was clipping through something else while this was playing, and it jumped through this. So my apologies. That's all it was, guys. Yeah, Mom's still awake. She's just listening quietly, like she always does.
Two problems, independent problems with the theory that the defense is articulating here, and they both come from Idaho Supreme Court decisions. The first, as this court has noted, comes from Hairston, where the court said this just isn't how you do the analysis. You don't cumulate them and then do
What's
the
intellectually wrong with that analysis, though?
with cumulating and then
I mean, I understand the legal cases may not be supportive of the defense's claim, but from an intellectual analysis, if the point is to make the death penalty less arbitrary,
correct.
why wouldn't you look at the net or the cumulative as opposed to each individual compared on its own in isolation?
So, Your Honor, I think to answer that question, looking back to kind of how this was developed with the aggravating factors, the idea behind the aggravating factors is that you have to be able to show that this person is morally worthy of the death penalty. And so if you have individually analyzed every single factor and every single one you found constitutional, then it doesn't matter if in every case you could apply one of those factors, because that factor is a reason why that person is morally worthy of the death penalty. And so it's not an arbitrary and capricious system. It's not left to the whims of somebody. It's
But if you have so many aggravators that on the whole would essentially apply to any first degree murder, then isn't it just left essentially to the prosecutor as to which cases are not worthy to bring as a capital case?
So absolutely, the prosecutor would have a lot of discretion in that. I don't know that I agree with the characterization that it's left to the prosecutor, because of course the prosecutor has to prove that aggravating factor beyond a reasonable doubt. And if they can prove one of those aggravating factors beyond a reasonable doubt to the jury, and the jury finds that, then that person is now worthy of the death penalty. And again, when we instruct the jury, we don't instruct them to consider all of the aggravators in the aggregate. We tell them you have to consider them individually. We tell the state's required to present non-duplicative evidence for each aggravator that it's going to assert. It can't just throw out a blanket of aggravators. I think focusing on single aggravators is consistent from beginning to end of our entire system. And so I don't see a problem with that analysis that the Idaho Supreme Court said that that's not how you do this. And I would note, I think the court has mentioned this as well, it's not just the Idaho Supreme Court. There are many courts who have rejected this approach. The defense hasn't been able to point to a single court in any state, in any jurisdiction, that has used this cumulative approach to attack the death penalty or the statutory scheme of the death penalty in any state. So I think the court was right in Hairston. Clearly, it's binding precedent. The defense in their reply brief, they tried to say their response to Hairston was, well, that was when judges were doing the determination. And I just don't see the relevance to that, logical or otherwise, how that would matter on the narrowing part. They point to Hidalgo, which they brought up multiple times today, which is a dissent. It has no binding authority. It has no effect whatsoever on the case. So they just can't point to anything to say that Hairston doesn't apply today. It does apply today. And the Idaho Supreme Court has rejected that approach. So that's the first reason why this fails. But then even independent of that, there's a second reason. And that is the defense is relying on this narrowing process that has been described by the United States Supreme Court. I believe the most recent case that they've kind of walked through that was the Tulipa case.
Thank you, Wisdom. I appreciate you throwing these facts up here so people can understand what some of this is. Very much appreciated.
And in Hall, our Idaho Supreme Court talked about Tulipa and exactly what that test requires. And they were in Hall, they were analyzing a single aggravator because that's how you do this. And it was, the court acknowledged that, yes, this would apply to many, many murders, but it doesn't apply to every murder. And that's all that Tulipa requires. So the way, even if it were appropriate to aggregate all of these circumstances, the appropriate narrowing question is, does it literally apply to every single murder? And even Professor Cover's analysis shows it doesn't. It's a high percentage, but it's not 100%. And so it would pass the narrow requirements of Tulipa as interpreted by the Idaho Supreme Court, even if it were proper to aggregate these together. Your Honor, in terms of the equal protection claim on geography, I think, here again, they run into a problem with the Idaho Supreme Court. A similar claim based on geography was raised in Harrison, and the court rejected it. The court not only rejected it, the court instructed future defendants, if you want to bring this claim, here's what we're going to need to see. And they said, in order to show that the imposition of the death penalty in Idaho is arbitrary and capricious, there must be some empirical evidence connecting the discrepancy that appears to be shown by Dr. Jensen's study and one or more impermissible factors. And the defense has been aware of that. And instead, they bring a study where the person who conducted the study acknowledges, I can't show that. That it's just not sufficient. It's not sufficient to make any kind of, at best, they've shown a statistical discrepancy, and that is not sufficient to claim some kind of constitutional violation, any kind of constitutional violation. I want to end just by talking a little bit about the court's question on, would you have to look at the data up to today? I think the question, or the answer to that, has to be yes, absolutely. There's no reason why the date Professor Cover conducted her study has any legal relevance or significance. It would be up through today. And I think this goes back to a problem of this whole accumulating the aggregating factors and then doing a mathematical study and finding a percentage, because let's say that courts engage in that conduct, and let's say that courts decide it's 50% is the magic number, and if you get above 50%, then your statutory scheme is unconstitutional. Well, what if Idaho is right at 50.5%, so it's unconstitutional, but then over the next year, a bunch of murders are committed and none of them satisfy the aggravating factors, so now we're at 49.5%. Now everyone in that year can be subject to the death penalty because the murderers that committed murders that year decided to do it in a way that didn't satisfy one of the aggravating factors. I don't think there's a logical basis for that. And I think that's why the Idaho Supreme Court has taken the approach they have, where this isn't a quantitative analysis, it's a qualitative one. Is there any narrowing that's being done? And if the answer is yes, then you've passed the test. That keeps things fair and uniform across the state and temporally across time. And so I think that's another reason why it wouldn't make sense to aggregate these.
Yeah, we're watching this for the second time too, but we're watching it because we're breaking it down. Some of this stuff we're not going to talk about it because I didn't care about it. But we earlier, for those of you that popped in later, we were talking through some of this stuff early on, and there's going to be more coming up here real quick here that we're going to be talking about too. So we're just breaking it down and talking about it. So that's the whole point in it tonight.
Unless there are any questions, we'd ask the court to.
You want to address the geography issue?
Yes, Your Honor, I addressed it briefly. I'm happy to talk about it more from the Harrison decision.
It's not necessarily a requirement you do, so I just wanted to know. You were fairly summary about it, and it seemed to me the defense had raised some issues that perhaps were a little more expansive than what they had argued in their brief. And so
I would certainly agree with that, Your Honor. So a couple of things on that. First, the idea that it somehow violates equal protection for Idaho to apply the death penalty when other states do not on a national basis. I'm not aware of any case law that would support that. And in fact, it's directly contrary to the case law that we're going to talk about later on, evolving standards of decency, where the U.S. Supreme Court has specifically acknowledged that, yes, there are some states that apply it and some states that do not. The conclusion from that isn't that just because there are some states that do not apply it, it's unconstitutional everywhere. So I don't think that that's an appropriate question. In terms of within the state of Idaho, I think to the court's point, with an equal protection analysis, really the first question you have to ask is, who are we talking about and what status do they have or what position do they hold? Because a critical part of the equal protection analysis is you have to treat people that are similarly situated the same. You don't have to treat people who are not similarly situated the same. So that initial determination of are they similarly situated requires a subject, a person. And so to the court's point, I think in the vast majority of cases, at least that I'm aware of, equal protection is raised as an as-applied challenge, as applied to the person bringing the challenge. So in this case, where they're trying to argue that it's only the larger counties that seek these things, as the court pointed out, that's not true in recent Idaho history.
I agree with your statement, Heather. I think the defense would have put in much more effort if they thought that he would be convicted, or thought if convicted, he doesn't already have an overwhelming chance at a conviction being overturned. Yeah, that's definitely a good point. Thank you, Heather. Again, and Sherry says non-statutory aggravating factors are pieces of evidence that can be used to show the impact of a crime on the victim's family or the defendant's prior bad acts. So that way you guys can kind of understand what some of these terms that are being used mean. Like I said, Wisdom worked in the court systems for a long time, so she knows all of this stuff and trying to put it in layman's terms for a lot of what they're saying, so that a lot of us are not sitting here going, huh, because that's what some people do with some of this, me included. So thank you again, Miss Sherry. Yeah, and they know the time and place for real argument on the matter isn't this one. I mean, that can be said. It's just, it seems like, regardless of the fact that it is something that needs to be done, it's kind of a waste of time, in my opinion. That's all. It definitely needs to be done. There's no two ways about that. But the arguments, I just feel like if you're really trying to get the death penalty pulled off the table, truly, the arguments are not strong enough for this. And that's kind of an important factor with this case, I would think. In a defense, you would definitely want that death penalty shut down. This ain't going to do it. So that's why I just feel like this was weak, guys. It was just too weak, and it should have been stronger in this sense. But if they really feel that he's that innocent, then I can understand why they're not putting the time into this argument. I guess that makes sense. Right. She's very good at that too. So maybe that's why. Maybe that's why this argument is weak. Maybe they're that confident in his innocence. That does make some sense if that's true, but that's some serious confidence, in my opinion. And to play with the death penalty like that and not put, you know what I mean? That's just an opinion again, but just saying.
And they, again, have not pointed to any study, Professor Covers or anywhere else, that shows that the reason why there are more death penalty cases brought in the larger counties is because of some unconstitutional reason, rather than, could it be explained by something else, like the fact that they are more appropriate in those areas. And frankly, the common sense understanding would be that you're probably going to see more death penalty cases in more populated areas, because just as a matter of statistics, there's probably going to be more first-degree murders committed there, and therefore probably more that are eligible for the death penalty. So certainly they would have to rebut that with some kind of evidence that shows, like, as the Idaho Supreme Court told them they had to in Hairston, that makes a direct connection between empirical evidence and some impermissible factor. And that's just missing here. Unless the court has any other questions. Thank you, Your Honor.
Rebuttal?
I just wanted to touch on the issue that he raised about Hairston and the timing of that, and the fact that at that time when that came down, judges were doing the imposition of death penalty sentencing. And that really is a very important distinction, because as you know, the arguments that are coming up in other motions, the difference in an experienced judge being able to get into all of these nuanced areas and apply beyond a reasonable doubt in the gateway phase, and then just mercy in the.
No, Leslie, I definitely don't think that that's possible. I thought about that earlier after we watched that part go through too.
Mitigation phase is very, very different than a jury's ability to do those things when it's the only case that they're looking at. So I do think it's important to take into consideration the timing of where we're at now with the jury decision. The other thing is, I just wanted to point out some of that mitigating language that I'd referenced in Tulepa that's in the statute that we don't have. Whether or not the offense was committed while the defendant was under the influence of extreme mental or emotional disturbance. Clearly not something that's in Idaho's aggravating statute to consider. Whether or not the victim was a participant in the defendant's homicidal conduct or consented to the homicidal act. Whether or not the offense was committed under circumstances which the defendant reasonably believed to a moral justification or extenuation for his conduct. A statute that, frankly, those types of terms in our statute would be very welcomed. And I wanted to also point out that the study dates amount to between 75 and 95 years in Hairston in 2002 and 2019 for Professor Covers. That's 37 years worth of data with the same definitions. So, you know, instruction in a few more years of data, you've got 37 years to rely on. There's no narrowing. Thank you.
Do you know what year the Capital Defense Fund was established?
It was after 95, and I think that Hairston may have been the impotence for that. If Mr. Logston was here, he'll be here later. I think he knows the exact year of that. But I don't. I just know it was
Has that
after
mitigated the
95.
issue in your mind?
Pardon?
Has that mitigated the issue in your mind?
No, I think that it has not. It has not. And I frankly think that the new system with the state public defense is going to make it worse. I think that there will be no reason for the state not to charge death in every first degree case, because our statute doesn't prevent them from. Everybody fits. Everybody fits.
Thank you. I will take the issue under advisement and issue a written opinion. It's 10:30. I'm going to take a 10-minute break, and we will
Regard, and then I will do multi murders, and Ms. Taylor will do future dangerous. So I'll basically do the next three, and given the time that you've asked, I'm assuming there will be less questions.
I will try to control.
For the court, that the defendant, by his conduct, whether such conduct was before, during, or after the commission of the murder at hand, has exhibited a propensity to commit murder, which will probably constitute a continuing threat to society. That language does nothing to narrow that. I'll skip right to the vague part of the argument. We're asking the court to consider three things in striking this aggravator. It isn't narrow. It's very vague, and it doesn't go to the culpability of the crime that's been charged, and if this happens, convicted of. Your Honor, this language, I think, has been acknowledged by our Idaho.
Okay, so to be honest with you guys, the biggest part to this entire thing for me that bothered me was the very, very beginning part. The rest of this stuff really didn't get to me until they got to what was it? Well, when that's, in fact, I'm going to skip to that because this is going to put all of us to sleep at some point. It's never going to get approved, in my opinion, anyway. So let me get to this part. When Jay Logston gets up here and starts talking about international law and all that kind of stuff, I was just like, what the hell? Where did this even come from? Do you know what I mean? That was a little too much for me. So, okay, he's there now. And let me see when Jay pops up here. Because like I said, we've already watched this whole thing once. Jay doesn't stand up till after the lunch break, I don't think. Here, hold on. Yeah, that's when he pops in. Here we go. Okay. Yeah, Jay's interesting.
Is the ruling Abdullah that essentially said you don't need to provide. Your Honor, as to the argument as to including the statutory eligibility requirements for a death case in the grand jury, I think the two major hurdles that we have to get over are, one, the Hurtado case not requiring the jury to apply to the states. And then the second is the ruling Abdullah that essentially said you don't need to provide these to the grand jury.
Seemed like a good place to start.
It is a good place to start. And as we tend to do in these cases, because they are going to go up on appeal, we are, of course, asking that those things be overruled. Certainly recognize Your Honor doesn't have the ability to do that, but we respectfully make the argument that those cases were wrong. We also make the argument that there is another way to get there. So the Fifth Amendment obviously is the grand jury amendment, and I think Abdullah was looking at the Sixth Amendment or notice requirements, what needed to be included there. We furnish an additional argument that the Eighth Amendment in death cases requires additional process. And we see that largely in what occurs at the sentencing hearing, but we also see it in things like requiring counsel before it was required for anything else was required in death cases. We also see it in requiring the state of Alabama to permit a lesser included instruction so that a jury can choose something besides something that would lead to
Let me
death.
ask you a question about that. So on the one hand, as I understand your argument, it is that the grand jury should be required to not only find an aggravating, statutory aggravating factor, but also that the grand jury then weigh it against mitigating evidence. Is that your position?
No. Let me be clear. As we would talk about in the trifurcation motion, I'm only talking about the statutory aggravators, not the non-statutory aggravators or the mitigators. It would simply be
Your brief says otherwise. So that's why I question that, because as we've learned, that takes a long time for those things to be developed. That's not necessarily evidence in the pocket of the state. What is now gone from a case timeline of several months to now multiple years would seem to me to even drag it out longer.
and I certainly understand that concern.
Yes, Mom.
I have to go to bed, sir.
Okay. Thank you for joining
I
me.
have to go to bed. I have to work in the morning.
I'm probably about to shut this
Thank you
down
for
anyway.
having me up.
We're
Good
going
night,
on.
y'all. Thank you for having me up.
hours. Can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for joining me. Sleep well, and hope to see you
Yep.
tomorrow. We're about
All right,
done
y'all
here.
make good choices. Good night.
You too, ma'am. Bye-bye. Yeah, I'm going to go a little bit further with this, guys, and I'm going to shut her down. We're at like almost 4 hours here. So I made my argument pretty much in the beginning. That's really where my biggest argument lies with this entire thing. My biggest letdown for this entire thing, if I was on the defense, that's what it would have been. Michelle E., hello, and great to see you tonight. Yeah, they do kind of resemble each other. Because I love doing it, Pebbles. I do. I truly love doing this. I love you guys. I love spending the time with you guys. I really like the interaction when people are, putting their thoughts and feelings into this as to what you guys feel about this stuff. That's the part of this that I enjoy the most. That's why this is a commentating channel and a review channel, because I like the commentation on it, on all this stuff, and talking about what it means and what it is and what the outcome and the results could be. So that is why we do this. So you're talking about the Nosferatu? Yes. Got you. Woke up. I got you. He does have that look about him, doesn't he? Anyway, we're almost done here, guys. Just a little bit longer and we're out.
I don't think that that's our position. I certainly do believe that the law would require the state to put on mitigation.
Truly, that's what my issue is too, and that's what almost the entire bit of argument has been. Sherry's got a great point. She says, why argue with a district court judge, a legislative law that he can't have? He has nothing. He can change nothing with that, guys. It's all through legislation. There's nothing that this man can do that they've argued through this. So what's the point? Again, it's very weak. Could you not come up with something better, or did you not care to come up with something better? Or is it that you're, like I said before, so overly confident in your case that you don't need to come up with this? I would still try to come up with something just in case something falls through. You know what I'm saying? That's all I'm saying. That's really all I'm saying. And no, I get it. To get it on the record, 100%, Bubbles. I absolutely agree with you, but that truly could be the only reason, because it's so weak. It's just, this is pathetic for them. And you shouldn't be overconfident. That's the problem. And I hope that they're not. I hope that they're not. I do. I hope they're not. Because once again, I don't know. I don't know. That is truly the only thing that makes sense to me too. This was bad. This was definitely, in my opinion, this was definitely a check on the prosecution side and a loss on the defense's side.
Dating evidence, if it
Heather says that definitely think that Exhibit O, Maury's testimony, and this 18 supplemental request is going to be big. I would like to see be something would needs to be. I hope you're right, Heather. I do hope you're right.
Had it because that's something that they're required to do by law. They're required to put on evidence, if known to them, would possibly point in the direction that the person is innocent, et cetera. But I don't think what our position is that the state would be required to put on essentially their entire sentencing hearing in front of that grand jury. The grand jury is still only just determining whether or not there is a reason to go forward with the case. Our point is that at the time of the founding, that grand jury would have known that all felonies lead to the gallows. So at that time, the grand juries were making decisions about whether or not people were going to face the death penalty. And it wasn't until the Supreme Court after Furman in the 70s that we came up with this entirely new system. But it's one where the grand jury has lost its part of its function, where it's looking at whether or not these people should be facing the death penalty or not. Essentially, they were deprived of that through the transition that was obviously intended to protect people from an arbitrary infliction of the death penalty. But the grand jury itself is supposed to also have a role in that. It's supposed to protect people from arbitrary decisions. And so that's essentially what our argument is that there should be a neutral fact finder placed between the citizen and the state when we're making the decision whether or not the death penalty should be sought. And so that is one of the reasons we're asking the court to strike the death penalty in this case. Does the court have any other questions for me? Thank you, Judge.
Your Honor, sounds like on Abdullah, this is just a issue preservation, so not much to comment on that. In terms of this other argument that they are saying you can look at it differently through the Eighth Amendment, keep in mind the Eighth Amendment is just the prohibition on cruel and unusual punishment. It's quite a stretch to jump from there to requirements on what needs to be presented to a grand jury. The Beck case that they cited suggests that maybe there could be a connection if it diminishes the reliability of the sentencing determination or the guilt determination, but that's not the function the grand jury plays. And so for this court to stretch the Eighth Amendment all the way back to the grand jury would be.
In fact, with respect to failings of a grand jury to pass on a particular element, for example, if there's been a trial, the general standard on appeal is, well, the matter went to a jury and they made the determination there's proof beyond a reasonable doubt, and therefore any error is moot.
Correct, Your Honor. And I think really that gets to the heart of this claim, which is it's just kind of another way of their argument that it shouldn't be the prosecutor deciding that a notice is filed. And the U.S. Supreme Court has said it's not a problem if the prosecutor has unfettered discretion in who gets the death notice and who doesn't. So that by itself isn't a problem. So unless there are any other questions, thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Any rebuttal?
Well, I think it would be best to push back at least a little on the idea that the Eighth Amendment can't go back that far. I mean, recall that it was the Eighth Amendment that required that there be counsel for people that were facing the death penalty. Now, I certainly understand the idea that the Eighth Amendment's concern is that we have a reliable procedure. I certainly understand that. But the grand jury, it does fulfill some of that function as well. And besides, at least if we're speaking in terms of what was understood to have the grand jury and what it did at the time that the nation was founded, it would have been stepping in a case involving a possible death penalty and being able to put a stop to it then and there. And so I do think that the Eighth Amendment has the ability to attach even that early on, at least in cases involving death. And then I recognize that there are these cases from the Supreme Court indicating that prosecutors do not have to have anybody determine whether or not they can file the death penalty and that they can drop it out of a sense of mercy. I think that's a slightly side question to, if they choose to go forward with it, who can stand up and say, before we spend years on one of these cases, that this is not the appropriate case, someone besides the prosecutor, which is what we have with grand juries and preliminary hearings, et cetera. And so we still believe that the argument here is one that can be passed on by this court and that hasn't necessarily been ruled on by these other cases that we also think should be overturned. Thank you, Judge.
Thank you.
I believe I have all the remaining arguments, so whichever the court would like
let's
to.
finish up topic 9 with your contention that the death penalty should be struck because it violates international law.
Thank you, Your Honor. So that motion is largely premised on the International Convent of, I'm gonna have to pull it up because it's the ICCPR. International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. And so essentially the argument comes down to this. We have signed and ratified a treaty that would put, we think, additional requirements on what we would do if we're going to have a death penalty in this country, and obviously we have one. One of those is a requirement that we make sure that we're not arbitrarily killing people. And the other one is that people are not being essentially tortured.
My understanding is when the time that that convention was ratified with the understanding that to the extent that it is agreeing to anything, it is agreeing to afford the Eighth Amendment protections.
That's correct, Judge. And I think to some extent, what we're arguing is the Eighth Amendment and the ICCPR work together, and that we can look at these international obligations and the Eighth Amendment and say that they essentially are the same thing. That's why we talk about.
Well, I think you're looking at it from two different prisms. I think what the state is saying, to the extent that this covenant applies, which is a question about whether it's self-executing and all the rest, it only governs to the extent that the Eighth Amendment, apart from that, would have protected that situation. Whereas what I think you're arguing is that the Eighth Amendment must be read to be broader as to what international law would dictate.
I think if what we're saying is that the state would argue that we read the Eighth Amendment and that's what the international law must be, we're saying you have to read the international law to decide what the Eighth Amendment.
So you're having the international law dictate what the United States Constitution means.
Correct. And we are doing that on the basis of what the United States has said itself about the fact that they believe that they live up to these things, and the fact that we have, we discussed the charming Betsy canon, which is obviously a very old canon and typically is just about whether or not our statutes are in line with our treaties. But I think particularly in this case, where the United States has essentially said, we signed on to this treaty because we live up by these same standards that everyone else does, we can look at what the international community thinks about those standards that we said we also abide by when we're determining whether or not we're living up to the standards in the Constitution.
But what they said specifically is that we think that we are living up to those, even though we have and will enforce a death penalty.
And I think, which is why we're not saying necessarily that the death penalty would be struck if it was done properly. Our argument is that the way that Idaho has its scheme set up, there are far too many statutory aggravators, and some of them are just big enough to drive a Mack truck through. And so just about every murder could be charged with and have the death penalty attached to it. And so that doesn't require the narrowing that we've said we're going to provide, and it certainly doesn't live up to what the international community would expect from us.
Yeah, I understand the argument.
Well,
I'll be frank, it's falling about as flat as you would expect it to fall before our Supreme Court or the Supreme Court of the United States.
well, Your Honor, it's an argument, and it must be made. So
You need to make a record.
thank you, Judge.
Your Honor, unless the court has any questions, I'm okay.
I know. Thank you. All right, let's talk about
So I think that's gonna do it. Like I said, I've seen all your guys' thoughts in here, but most of the argument comes in the beginning of this, and those are the parts that bothered me. Like I said, I'm pretty sure bugged Mom and most everybody else. I know they bugged Doodle. The rest of this stuff, holds no bearing for me. It's very weak as well, but that first part is what really got me. That's why I wanted to break this down and get your guys' thoughts as well. So, but I think that's going to do it for tonight with this, guys. I am tired. Whether I sleep right or not, I don't know, but I'm tired. I'm exhausted. I was up at 5 or 6 today. I do this every day, but this is how I end up every night. So, either way, yeah, that was a pretty funny statement. It really was. And it shows you this is not going to go through. This motion's not going to happen as far as I can tell. This is going to be passed off and done. He's not going to even, it's just not going to happen, I don't think. So that's what my thoughts are for the outcome for this. But I thank you guys for joining me. It was nice of 12 Gauge to jump up here and throw us his insight and input. Of course, your guys' in chat was amazing as always. I appreciate you all joining us tonight. We will be live tomorrow morning like we always are for the morning show. I would love to see you all there. Please, if you can, show up. I got some stuff to cover tomorrow that I didn't get to cover today. So we will catch up with that. Besides that, guys, you guys are absolutely amazing. Don't forget to love yourselves and each other. Don't change a thing, folks. Like I said, you are the beautiful people. You are absolutely amazing. You are the reason why I'm here. And I cannot wait to be here with you again. Have a wonderful night, folks. Much love to each and every one of you. Good night. God bless. And I will see you very, very soon. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Typing at the speed of light, hunting down the shadows, bringing wrongs to right, digging deep in the data, facts sharp as a knife. With every single story, he's fighting for our lives. A voice for the voiceless, he won't stay quiet. Daniel's got the fire igniting the fight. True crime revelation shining through the night. With every victim story, he pulls at the strings. A hero in the darkness, hear the truth he brings. Streaming loud and clear, cracking cases, open hearts filled with fear. His channel's a beacon in a world gone wrong. He guides us through the chaos, a soldier so strong. The clicks and the lights, they follow his lead. With every new case, he plants a new seed. Sharing their stories, giving hope where it fades. Daniel's a warrior through the trials he waves. In a world of silence, he shouts out their names. Daniel's got the fire igniting the fight. True crime revelation shining through the night. With every victim story, he pulls at the strings. A hero in the darkness, hear the truth he brings. From the shadows he rises, streaming loud and clear. True crime revelation shining through the night. With every victim story, he pulls at the strings. A hero in the darkness, hear the truth he brings. Daniel's got the fire igniting the fight. True crime revelation shining through the night. With every victim story, he pulls at the strings. A hero in the darkness.